All right, well, welcome to this week's Talk or Ask Us Anything. It's been a bit of a, well, sort of a quiet Tesla news week, I guess, of sorts, although there's always something happening in the EV space. There's been a very big, actually, sorry, before I start the news, I'd just like to welcome anyone who's new. I'll do that at the end of the news. So anyone who this is their first Ask Us Anything, please put your hand up or wave or just speak out and say, hey, that's me. And we'll get to you shortly. So into the news, there was a bit of positive news out of New South Wales. That state brought out a little vehicle strategy, EV strategy. And as you scroll down to page 21, they basically commit to spending $171 million over 4 years for fast DC charging infrastructure, which is a fantastic amount of money and a fantastic amount of resources they're going to put into basically having a statewide fast DC charger network. There's actually a map a little bit further down which actually shows the extent to which they are going to cover the state, going all the way west to Broken Hill. And they're also indicating in some of the closer areas where they're actually going to have ultra-fast DC chargers along the commuter corridors. And one part of what the New South Wales state government was committing to was in the urban areas, there will be a fast DC charger within 5 kilometres of everyone in the Greater Sydney area. And I think some of the other cities as well. So that means if you've got on-street parking only, if you've got no off-street parking and no real means, or you're in a unit development where you can't do home charging, then you will be no more than 5 kilometres away from a fast DC charger. And then they're also committing to have what they call destination chargers as well in numerous locations. Further to that, they are also introducing a stamp duty exemption for EVs less than approximately $70,000. I think it was $78,000, which was pretty close to the luxury car tax threshold for EVs, effectively. I'll just bring that one up. So stamp duty up to $78,000. This is for all EVs purchased from the 1st of September 2021. And it does include some plug-in hybrids as well. And they also offer $3,000 rebates for the first 25,000 EVs sold in New South Wales from the 1st of September 2021 that are available for less than $68,000. Further to that, there is a cost recovery mechanism, and I think they've committed that from about 2027, well, it's actually the sooner of either 2027 or when EV sales reach, I think it's 30%. All vehicle sales in New South Wales, although that does include plug-in hybrids, I believe. But as soon as that threshold is met, then they will introduce a road user charge for those vehicles. So I guess, you know, some might say that that's sort of the bad part of the medicine. But I guess the good thing is the sugar's coming first. They are committing, you know, $171 million in the next 4 years to profoundly alter the EV charging landscape, and also providing some incentives, stamp duty exemptions and other rebates. And then there is a road user charge, you know, in the next 6 years. So make of that as you will. And we can sort of discuss that a little bit later on in the show. The only real Tesla news, I mean, there's a couple of bits and pieces that we can discuss later. There was an interesting I think it was Elon Musk actually announced that that Tesla's going to host an artificial intelligence day in about a month's time, which should be interesting. But in the meantime, Andrej Karpathy presented at the Computer Vision Foundation CVPR 2021 workshop on autonomous driving. And that's a very long acronym, but basically what I think the most interesting thing for us is he described, this is not the Project Dojo, which is a supercomputer that Tesla intends to build or will be building. This is actually just one of their clusters of computers that are used to train the neural networks that are in our full self-driving computers. An interesting thing there is that Andre actually said that this cluster alone would qualify as the world's 5th most powerful supercomputer. And for those who want to geek out, you've got basically 1.8 exaflops, which is floating point operations, basically mathematical functions that this thing can do per second. And it's got 10 petabytes of storage, and it can actually transfer that storage at 1.6 terabytes per second, which is a blisteringly fast sort of rate of what they can do. And there's a total of 640 terabits per second of switching capacity. So on the right is actually one of their network switching cabinets, and this left part here are the actual consoles, which are 720 nodes of I think it must be a cluster of 8 lots of A100 80 gigabyte processors, which NVIDIA only just announced, I think it was in August last year. So clearly Tesla is on the bleeding edge of compute power as far as training their networks. In that conference that Andrej Karpathy was speaking to, he sort of mentioned a few interesting things. Tesla do things like gather 10,000 3-minute video clips as their training data, which they've got in cars like ours because they actually do fleet collection of data. And what they don't want is just boring old driving around with nothing happening. They want all the edge cases where something weird happens, and they then feed that into their cluster of computers to train the neural networks to basically perform better. And I think Andre mentioned that there's been about 6 rounds of this, and that sort of explains why, at least in the States with the full self-driving beta, that the performance of these cars is just getting more, just better and better every iteration. So that's a little bit of Tesla news. The other thing I've got is that the Tesla's Australia and New Zealand country director, Kurt Schlosser, seems to have left Tesla and possibly onto greener pastures. So that was a bit of a rumor that was kicking around, but now if you look on LinkedIn, his profile has now disappeared, which is sort of customary before you sort of announce your new job. So we obviously wish Kurt all the very best, and obviously hope the person that replaces him even better. So that should be quite interesting to see how Tesla proceeds in the next little bit with a new country director. Hopefully there might be some good things coming about that change as far as Western Australia is concerned. I guess on that note, we can only hope. I think that's sort of most of the news. Is there anyone that's here for the first time this evening? I think Sarah possibly.
Yeah, sorry, I was unmuting. I am here for the first time.
Awesome. Welcome, Sarah. Have you gotten your Model 3 yet, or you're still waiting for it?
I pick it up on Friday.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll make sure that you're fully primed on that process, which, as others in the room have heard several times, is very rapid. So you're certainly not going to be bored at Tesla waiting around for your car to be delivered to you. It will be done very, very quickly, but it's still, hugely exciting. I think that might be all the new people. So so welcome again, Sarah. Now we've had a couple of news items. I'm just seeing if Shane. Oh, Shane, you are here. Actually, before I come on to you, Shane, Doug is not here, but Doug asked a question. Actually, we'll get to him later. Shane, you're on. Shane had an interesting case. Actually, Shane, do you want to speak to this? You're muted and blacked out there. Oh, no, Shane's coming.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting there.
You're all right.
I was at the other end of the house listening to you on the telly.
That's okay. I'm going to put your homework up.
Oh, my little experiment.
Your little experiment.
Yeah, I'm interested to know if you agree with my conclusions here, but anyway.
Well, I'm not going to spoil it just to give away the ending straight away. We'll let it go through to the. How do we go this one? That one, isn't it? No, it's not that one. Apologies.
There you go.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah,
For those who don't know,
so
go on, Shane.
Sorry, Harold, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, for people that don't know, Shane's daily commute is basically down 2J Road, which is down the big hill from the what do you call it, the Darling Escarpment, which basically falls from 249 metres to about 3 metres. No, that's not right, 27, sorry. But he's basically falling down. He's basically
249 metres of down and 3 metres of up along the way. So the little instant range predictor thing. Since I've done this, I'll come back to something else, because since I've done this, I've been to Albany and discovered the other button there, the trip button. But so my instant range pretty much looks like this every day. Sort of in the morning, I go down the hill, it goes green, I get a whole bunch of battery back, even though I haven't used very much because I've charged at home. And then in the evening, it does the opposite. I get the giant hill on the right there. And the projected range goes from, all the way up to, I've seen it as high as like 600 kilometers type thing. And then it'll drop all the way down to, 200 as soon as that green bit moves off the screen and the big orange peak still left there. So I had some funky messages coming up talking about my regen braking turning off. That one, yep, regen braking temporarily reduced. Even though the car wasn't fully charged or the battery was warm, these sorts of things, that sort of thing happened. So where were we? Yeah, so.
Oh, sorry, just to interject, it's awesome because you're doing a much better job at this than Elon Musk did at the Plaid Model 3, Model S delivery event. So well done, Shane.
Yeah, right, yeah, good stuff. And I just ran from the other end of the house too, I haven't caught my breath. So what happened is I happened to have the day off on Friday. Had some visitors coming, so I had my car nicely charged up, and then we took off. We drove around town for a fair while, and I got my state of charge down to about 60-odd%. Harold happened to give me a phone call about something else, and we talked about it, and I went, oh, well, now's as good a time as any. I'll do an experiment. So my batteries would have been nice and warm. It was reasonably warm, well, warmish day for what it's been lately. You want to go on to the next bit, Harold, I think? Yep. So this is just towards the top of the hill. I had full regen, had about, there's my 60%. I stuck it on the auto drivey thing so that, because it keeps the speed a heck of a lot better than what I can. And took a photo of the screen, or got the passenger to take a photo, shall we say? Of course I did. so it was a little bit slow in getting that first photo. So there's sort of a start point of 16.8 watt hours that's already been used from when I set the trip meter. And you want to go to the next one? Yep. About halfway down the decline, it's sort of showing the regen braking has started popping in, and it hadn't given me a message yet, but you can see that the car camera has picked up where the 80K sign is, so I know exactly where it is. Yeah, so it had used minus 69 watt hours per kilometre to get there. If you work that out, then based on the 4.3 kilometres and take off the bit that I'd started with and all the rest of it, basically the car was charging at around about 8 kilowatts for those couple of minutes to get to that point. The hill sort of goes up a little tiny bit. No, you're right. Hill sort of goes up a little tiny bit, then it goes down fairly steeply and like for a fairly long way. So the regen braking, about halfway down that bit, the regen braking kicked in quite a lot more, and I got the little message saying regen braking temporarily reduced, and you'll get it as you're driving further. So because I had the photo of it, I could work out that the car had just pumped something like 20 kilowatts into the 20 kilowatts into the batteries for about 45 seconds or thereabouts. The hill keeps going for a bit longer than that. So my theory is that the onboard charger in the Model 3 is limited to the AC charger is limited to 11 kilowatts. If I was designing this thing, I'd use the same charger to charge the batteries. Well, I would have put 2 in. So my guess is it's basically just overheating. The onboard charger can handle peak rates over 20 kilowatts, but when it does that for a reasonable amount of time, then the battery starts to get warm, and it limits the braking so that it can cool down a bit. I think was there more? Oh, yeah, yeah, that's right. So yeah, that just basically turned around, drove back up the hill again. And yeah, the total round trip like consumption to get from the bottom to the top and back to the from the top to the bottom and back to the top again was around about the 120 watt hours per kilometre, which on a nice dry road on a nice clear day, that seems to be, driving sensibly, that seems to be about what I get, even a little bit lower than what I get. So I don't know, I'm an engineer and I find that impressive. That sort of efficiency is pretty impressive.
Yeah, cool. It certainly is. So now if I mark your homework, the car doesn't actually use the charger to do regen. Basically what happens is the car draws DC power from the battery, converts it to AC in the inverter in the actual drive unit to then power the switch reluctance AC motor or the induction motor, depending on whether it's front or rear drive, or the front or rear drive unit. Now, the way it does regen is effectively it still powers the motor, but it does it out of phase, and then it basically causes power to flow in the reverse direction through the inverter back to the battery as DC. So the charger isn't involved at all.
Just out of interest, the maximum charge rate while on regen for the Model 3 is 77 kilowatts.
Yes, so that was the other part. Yeah, thanks, Bex. The other part is there isn't like a 20 kilowatt limit. Is actually much higher than that, and it can peak as much as about 70 odd kilowatts. So it can really retard the car quite well. It's the equivalent of basically putting your foot down, but in reverse, sort of.
Yeah.
That energy flows back to the battery. Now, I actually, when you sent me that email, I actually then went and it was a couple of days ago, did the same trip. Now, from my place to where you started at the top of the hill is about.
So you did the same trip.
Yes, I did the same trip in my car, which is just an old Model X. And it basically, that was on, well, that was yesterday. So it was cold, obviously. So my car started out at, the battery temperature average was 14 degrees. So it was quite cold. And I had restricted regen because the car was cold, and it restricts the regen until the battery pack gets to 19 degrees. So by the time I actually got to the top of the baling plan, I think it is, I should have actually downloaded these, but I didn't. It's basically very similar to where you started there, Shane.
Yep.
Just the top. I think that's near the
tip.
Near the tip, just past it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But my car was then nicely warmed up. The battery pack was at 23 degrees. So it was nice and warm. And I had full regen the whole way down the hill. And I think from memory,
Okay.
actually, your comment about the 20 kilowatts is pretty accurate. I think from memory, I on my dial, I've got a slightly different way of indicating it on the Model X. But looking at that dial, it looked like I was regenning at about 20 kilowatts, sort of maximum, just to maintain the speed limit down the hill. Now, one thing that my car doesn't have that your car does is mine does not have a heat pump air conditioner. Or should I say heat pump for the purpose of heating the car, heating the cabin. Whereas yours does. So when I'm trying to warm the cabin, it does it through a resistive heater that just heats the air directly from battery power, which is 100% efficient. Whereas your car uses the octavalve and the heat pump to move energy in and out of the car, or in and out of the battery pack, in and out of the drivetrain, and in and out of the cabin. And it can actually do all those things all at once to varying degrees. My theory is that, and this has been borne out by some experiments that Bjorn Nyland has done in Norway, albeit in much colder conditions. My theory is that the heat pump air cons in the new Model 3s actually suck the heat out of the batteries to warm the cabin. And in doing so, if that temperature of the battery pack goes below 19 degrees, you start getting restricted regeneration. So when you're going down the hill, your car isn't actually working. It's not really expending much energy doing that, because it's basically on regen. There's energy going into the battery, which will warm it up a little bit, but the drivetrain isn't really working hard. So my theory that when you're getting down to the bottom of the hill is it might be sucking the warmth out of the batteries, which then affects the regen. And it's doing so to get absolute maximum efficiency, even though it's wasting a bit of that energy, because to maintain speed, well, actually on that indicator there, if we go back to your image.
Yeah, there should be a temperature in the corner of what the daily temperature was, I don't.
Yeah, see, there was, I don't see that on this image, it's not captured there, but
I might have the original. Hang on.
You can see your regen is only about half as much as the limit. So you're probably regenning at the appropriate rate to maintain speed, which you were, because it was at 79 or 80 Ks an hour.
Yeah.
So the limit is coming up, and you have got the warning, but it's not affecting your performance down the hill. But I mean, it's a very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting notification. I mean, I've never seen that before. In the Model X's, at least in mine, it doesn't sort of give you that sort of notification. What you do get is like a little yellow triangle with an exclamation mark, and the regen limit appear on the dial. But we've got like a circular dial, a bit like a speedo. So.
Harold, I have a physics question. If you're going downhill and you're regenerating 20 kilowatts, if you go downhill faster, does that mean you regenerate more?
No, because
Well, no,
your
because not-
the
not
time
the
taken
speed.
to go down the hill is less.
The speed.
Yeah.
Don't forget, you're going downhill at a constant speed.
Yes, and then if you accelerate quicker downhill, I know
No, you're not accelerating. If you're accelerating, if you're freewheeling down the hill, then you're not
Yeah.
regenerating anything. So your speed will be increasing until you hit terminal velocity at that angle.
No,
Right.
what I mean, if
Which
you're
in, the
going
model,
down,
which in the Model 3 is insanely low. It really
Yes.
doesn't take very much of a hill for it to start regenning.
yeah, no, yeah, same in in all Teslas really. It's just I've just kind of often wondered, like going downhill in the regen, I'm like, if I go faster, am I regenning more?
No, in fact,
And
because
The rate is higher, but you're regenning less, if that makes any
you'll have
sense.
more
I guess that I would be less because it would sound ridiculous, but I've never kind of tested it.
No, you'll have more wind resistance. So let's just say you've got nothing left in your battery and you're struggling to get home and you just make it to the top of the scarp. You're probably best off going down the scarp at like 50 k's an hour or 60 k's an hour than 80 k's an hour, because there'll be less wind resistance. So more of the energy, and you're actually regenerating for a longer period of time at a lower speed. So there's less wind resistance helping out.
I guess so. What is the ideal speed in which to go downhill to get optimum regen?
Well,
Just like everywhere, go slowly.
At the speed limit when you're driving normally, but if you're on vapors, then it's probably better to go slower. But of course, it's better to go slower for the whole rest of your journey, even when you get to the flat bit to make it home. Unless you can draft behind a truck or something like that and gain a little bit extra. But my working hypothesis is that Shane's car, it's actually pulling the heat out of the battery pack to warm the cabin. And because it's on the cusp anyway, because the car, even in a garage, would probably be at the 18, 19, 20 degree mark. Actually, before that, Shane did mention that.
I just had a look, Harold. It's actually 17 degrees according to the car photo. I don't know if it's in one of those previous shots.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Well, actually, now that's ideal because depending on how the air conditioning is working, if it still wants to pull heat out, it would prefer to take heat out of a nice warm battery pack than the cool 17 degree air. And you've probably
I think the aircon was probably actually running, as in cooling rather than heating. At the
what
time,
temperature was it set to? It would have been set to 21 degrees.
20, 21, something like that.
Yeah.
I actually see it in one of the other photos, but I've got another one as well, because after that, I then did my first big road trip. I've lost something here. I then did my first big road trip. I went down to Albany, which was fantastic fun. And I've got a whole bunch of learnings off of that I'd be happy to share too. But Mount Clarence is quite a long hill as well, from up at the Anzac Museum right the way down to Middleton Beach. It was definitely colder in Albany on what day was that? We were doing that on Saturday. Yeah, it was definitely colder. It was just before the big storm came. Sorry, Sunday that was, Sunday. And it didn't do it.
Yep. Well,
so
how far had you driven to get to Albany?
Nowhere near. No, we'd parked up on Saturday night, so I wouldn't have done very many. We just spent 3 hours at the Anzac Museum, so the car would have been nice and cold by then.
I think the clincher would be you need to get a dongle, a CAN bus dongle.
Yeah, sniff the CAN bus and have a look at what's
onto your car, and then use a app called Scan My Tesla, which is what I've used for my car, and then you can actually see. So
Yeah,
that would be the
I
clincher.
did see the same. I did see the same message pop up again today on the drive home from work, and that would indicate that it maybe is something to do with the temperature thing, because I hopped in the car, turned the heaters on because it's freezing.
Yep.
Drove not very far. The inside of the car was nice and toasty,
Yep.
but the regen button come back up. So
yeah, I think it's fairly definitive because, like I said, these cars are militantly insistent on scavenging energy wherever they can. And the most efficient is to pull it out of this nice battery pack, because in the octavalve, you've got full access to that coolant. And if that coolant is warmer than the air flowing over the evaporator, it's an evaporator condenser. It's multi. Well, it's actually an evaporator. It'll much prefer to do that, is pull it from the battery pack. Now you could say that's one of the idiosyncrasies of these cars, is they're sacrificing some regen ability for optimum driving efficiency. So here's a clincher. If you turn off your aircon completely, it shouldn't do it. Should I say?
I'll give it a try. I'll give it a try tomorrow morning.
Yeah, if you start driving and it hasn't got regen limit, and you leave the aircon off, it shouldn't appear. But that's not to say that if you've got a little bit of regen limit when you first start the car, it won't keep going for a while, because
I'm getting the car to precondition itself in the morning while it's still plugged in. So
yes,
that shouldn't be too much of a drama. I'll try it out tomorrow.
Carmen,
I was going to say we should get.
Oh, so hang on 2 seconds. Shane, what did you say, Carmen?
Yeah.
If you brake while you're going downhill?
Oh, well,
I don't know.
No. So what Shane did, Carmen, was put his car on autopilot. So on autopilot, it actually does everything automatically. So he was at the speed limit. And in fact, if we just go down to the next.
That was at the top of the hill when I was behind a truck, that particular photo, but yeah. So
the car's actually automatically doing 80 kilometers an hour, and it's actually got a little bit of regen. So it's not using the brakes at all. It's just using regen. If a car had come in front of Shane's or was slower and it couldn't adjust its speed well enough, it would then use the brakes a little bit, just like the car does sometimes. Well, yeah, when someone's slowing in front of you like a lot, it will use the brakes. But on autopilot, it generally doesn't unless it has to. Which, if your car, say, is at 100% and it's got a regen limit, or it's very cold, then it will just use brakes when you're using traffic-aware cruise control or autopilot. But basically,
it's not as efficient if you brake while you're trying to regenerate downhill.
No. What you should do, and you can get used to it. So if an intersection further ahead is turning red, rather than continuing to drive, at the speed limit and then waiting for 300 or 200 meters and then start braking late, if you just take your foot off the accelerator, unless the car's really cold or very full, it will then regenerate most of that and almost come to a stop. And it takes it a while to be able to predict. Sometimes you think, oh, it's not going to stop in time, and it actually does. It sort of has that sweet spot of regeneration towards the end where it really slows down a lot. And it's super efficient because you're not putting heat into your brake discs. You're putting all the energy into your battery. Now, Shane, it's interesting that you mentioned Albany, because I'm going to bring Angela in at this stage, because Angela's actually gone not quite to Albany, but actually gone to Denmark.
Oh, you're stuck there. we couldn't get back out through Denmark.
No, well, not at the moment, but I didn't want to go to, I didn't go into Albany itself. I drove yesterday from Perth, actually from Sarah's place in Wembley, via Williams and Kojonup to Albany Airport, and then back, had to go back up to Narrikup and cut across. But yeah, I was just a bit gobsmacked at the lack of range, if you like. I mean, it was my first drive. I only picked the car up on Monday. It was my first big drive, and I left Wembley with 88% battery and drove at the speed limit, got to Williams, only had 27%, recharged at the Tesla charger there to 47%. That took nearly an hour. Only just got to Kojonup. I had 10% in the battery when I got to Kojonup, and then had to wait an hour and 15 minutes for it to recharge to 100%, and then drive on, and eventually got home with about 20%. So it was a very interesting experience for me, because I thought, I didn't realize that I would only get, I mean, basically 300 kilometers range, traveling at the speed limit most of the time. Did a couple of quick overtakes, of course, but yeah, and I spoke to Pete this morning, and he said that, yeah, that would be about right. But I thought maybe there's something wrong. Maybe I should be getting more.
Well, once
My
the
experience was-
supercharger opens up, you should be all right. But yeah, I would think 300 on a standard range plus in realistic conditions.
Okay.
my
Yeah,
experience
well, it
was
was
a bit-
cold, of course. It was, you know, between 10 and 13 degrees all the way. Yeah, it was just a bit. By the way, Kojonup, I think there's going to be about 4 superchargers there. I could see 4 posts.
Williams.
I've got a photograph of them.
Williams.
And I chatted to the guy there, and he said that Western Power is going to be connecting them at the end of July.
Oh,
The
really?
28th of July, and Tesla will be then going the beginning of August to get it up and running.
Oh, wow, this is new
Oh.
information.
You heard it first
Good,
on
good.
Ask Us Anything.
Well, we
Good
actually
catch
spoke
on
to
you.
the horse's mouth, if you like, in the wool shed. He was really up to speed, really nice guy.
Wow, that's awesome. We've
Yeah.
been waiting for years.
Well, I've actually got photographs. I took a couple of photographs, which I could send
Yeah.
you later if you like, Harold.
Yes,
of
if you send it to, have you got it on your phone or on your computer?
on my phone.
Okay, I'm just going to send you my my phone number. Where's chat? Here we go.
By the way, the chargers, as you face the wool shed, they're on the Perth side of the wool shed, on the left of the wool shed. The north side, yeah.
Yes, they certainly are. We've actually got on our website, we've actually got photos of them.
Yes, I saw your
Interesting you say
photos.
you- Oh,
There we go. So
Yeah, sounds like they might have done some more.
there's
I've got
actually,
a better photo than that.
well, cool. We'll send them over and we'll
Yes,
put them
good
up. We'll
okay.
put them up. Yeah, so there's actually going to be
my
3
experience
stores.
of getting to Albany was a fair bit better than that. I'm not quite sure how you've managed to stop at Williams for an hour, because I left from where I am up the hill here, which would be further away than Wembley Downs. By the time I got to Williams, I still had, I can't remember, plenty of charge. I did plug it in for sort of 5 or 10 minutes, but that was more to entertain the little 8-year-old that was checking out the car.
Really?
And then we drove on to.
But what have you got? Have you
Kojonup.
got the standard range plus?
You've got long range.
Yeah,
haven't you, James?
no, SR plus.
Oh, okay.
I pulled into Koji with something like 20% left, I think. But we'd planned that. So we got there at like 1:30 and went in and had a sandwich. Walked up to the servo, bought some mouthwash because we'd forgotten to pack it, and bought some lollies for the rest of the trip. By the time we got back to the car, it was at 100%. And that well and truly made it to Albany, like well and truly. And then on the way back, I left Albany with 96%. And we got all the way to Bridgetown and that was through rain and
Wow.
and wet roads and really cold. And I didn't realise this, but apparently all cars, the fuel efficiency drops off significantly with on a wet road. I had no idea about that, but yeah, we pulled into Bridgetown with like 6% left or something like that.
Oh, goodness me.
Went and had a by the time we had a steak sandwich, half an hour later the car had oodles to get us to Bunbury. The reason we went that way was because we wanted to try the supercharger. So we put in a little bit in.
Which supercharger?
The one in Eton.
The supercharger at Eton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So
What's
went
the
to
charger
Eton.
at Bridgetown like? Is that just the
That's a
standard?
50 kilowatt.
50
No, it's a
kilowatt, is
50
it?
kilowatt DC jobby. Yeah. And that put
Okay, well-
in half an hour that I've got the invoice here somewhere, but it put in oodles to get us to Bunbury. We still had like 20 something percent when we got to Bunbury, and then that supercharger, that thing, wow. That thing's impressive. Very impressive piece of kit.
Well, why would it take? Why would I use so much then?
Angela,
well,
if I could just jump in,
Yeah.
because I've just been down to Boston and Margaret River for the weekend, and I've got a few interesting things from that. But when we left, it was bloody cold. It was peeing down with rain, and normally to get from my home to the Eton supercharger, I use 41% during summer. I used well over 50% of the battery to get there with the cold, wet, rain, wind, and so on. It used an additional amount. Normally, I average around the 140 watt hours per K. I was averaging over 170 watt hours per K getting down there. And it was the same coming back, although it wasn't very wet.
So Nigel, on those numbers that Angela mentioned just before, I worked out she was using about 200 watt hours per kilometre. So that's quite a lot.
I mean, if you think, I mean, she's got a Standard Range Plus, which has got about a 50 kilowatt battery in it.
55, yeah.
Yeah, look at 140 watt hours per K, you're going to get 330 Ks. If you do better than that, that's great. Otherwise, like mine, I mean, I was using 170, I wouldn't get 300 Ks range in total. So no, the weather, the road surface makes a humongous difference. During summer, I can get down there using 41%.
Yeah, and as we talked about last week, what you got to realize is that when the battery starts cold, the number it reports as being in the battery will be wrong effectively. So we will be calculating based on Angela was talking about starting in Perth at 88%. If the battery was cold, it probably actually in reality had less than that in terms of usable battery. I mean, I'm sort of talking about that backwards, but that in reality is what it feels like. So the trick is to leave with a charged and warm battery, and
how do you do that?
By running the HVAC while you're still charged. Run the aircon while you're still plugged into shore power before you leave. So it both warms up the car, but it'll also warm up the battery.
For how long? 5 minutes or?
Well, see, with my car, which is different to yours, I tend to do a kind of a last top up just before I leave, because that's the way my battery chemistry likes to work. So what I'll do if I'm doing a long drive is I'll charge it to about 85-90% at night, and then in the morning I'll wake up maybe an hour or so before I leave and crank the battery up to 100% and turn the preconditioning on at the same time. So yeah, maybe an hour, and just have the aircon on running from shore power the whole time.
But Angela, with your battery, you can very easily go to 100% all the time. In fact, Tesla recommends that you go to 100% at least once a week.
Yeah. So in that case, if you're still able to be plugged in the morning before you set off, You know, maybe even just 20 minutes, half an hour before you go, just either trot out to the car and turn the aircon on, or do it from the app, and it'll make quite a big difference to the battery's performance just to be warm before you set off.
Yeah. The other interesting thing was when I go down to Buston in summer and navigate to the Eaton supercharger, my battery preconditioning, if it comes on, might come on 10 minutes or so before arrival. You'll never guess both ways how long it came on battery preconditioning for supercharging before arrival.
20 minutes.
45 minutes.
Whoa.
I told you it was cold.
Wow.
45. I couldn't
And
believe it.
tell
I go,
me,
what? I've still
Mine
got
did
on a
that too from
supercharger- on a supercharger,
that
how
too,
long does
almost
it take
from,
to get to 100% from, say, 10%?
Oh, so this is
35, 40 minutes.
Yeah, so this is a very valid point. What I'll show you now is not the Model 3 charging. It's actually the Plaid Model S, but that's just because it's a handy chart. So unfortunately, it's in miles, and it's talking about a slightly different car with a larger battery pack. But this is also talking about the supercharger that will be at the Williams woolshed, which is the version 3 supercharger. But what you can see is, say for instance, from say 5 to 60% takes 18 minutes.
Right.
For another 20%, but 5 to 80% takes 31 minutes. So my maths is awful, but that's about 13 minutes. It takes 13 minutes to get the next 20%. So it takes almost as much time to go from 60 to 80% as it does from 5 to 60%. So, and then for instance, in your case, Angela, you went to basically 100%, which took you the best
An
part
hour
of
and
an
15
hour.
minutes. Yeah, more.
Well, and in the Plaid Model S, it does the same. It takes 52 minutes to go from 5 to 95%. But if you went, say, to just 80%, which is only 15% less, it's almost half the time, not quite, but it's almost half the time. So what you certainly shouldn't do, unless you really need to, is charge your car much beyond, say, 80, 90%, if you're fast charging it on a trip, because hopefully the interval between charging locations is such that you can always go between the sweet spot of, 20 to 60, 70% or 80%.
Yeah.
But you're really losing a lot of time doing that last bit from 80 or 90% up to anything like 100%. That's where you're really wasting a lot of time.
The problem is where I live, there are no other chargers. Like, I had to go to Albany Airport and then back across and down to Denmark. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. So and I knew I wanted to get home. So I didn't really have much choice. I didn't think, it is, I got home with about 20%. So
Yep.
20% is heaps, and charging only 10% of that or 15% of that would have saved you probably 25 minutes at Kojana.
Yeah, right.
And so look, we're not criticizing you at all, because everybody on their first drive, including me, has done exactly what you did. And that's fantastic. You did the right thing, learn what the car can do, everything else. After a while, you get a tiny bit more blasé about that. I'm not going to charge to 100. I'll charge till I've got 5 to 8% allowance, and then I'm just going to go.
I've pulled into Lake Grace, each direction to Esperance with 2K's range showing each way.
Power user.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't do that now with a baby in tow, but So Angela, when you look at your on your energy menu item, which is under the it's where the arrow is on your screen. There's an up arrow at the bottom part of your screen. As Shane was talking about, he had it set to consumption. But if you're navigating to somewhere, if you press the trip button, it will then show a slope that starts at sort of the top left-hand corner and then goes downwards at a certain angle. And it will actually project what it thinks the car is going to do on your trip.
Yeah.
And as Ken was saying, 20% is actually heaps. Now, it all depends. As you get more and more used to the car, your level of comfort will vary to the point where once you start trusting your car and you know it's going to do it, you could quite safely have, say, 10% as the destination, presuming that you know that you can sort of either charge on the way or, you know, top up somewhere if you want to, if you get nervous. Or what you can do is just slow down a little bit. So for every 10% you reduce your speed, you increase your range by about 12%, compounding.
Right.
So,
Okay.
you know, if say you were getting a little bit tight on energy, if you went from 110 k's an hour down to 100, you'd get an extra 12% range, which on
Wow.
380 k's total range is a fair bit, you know,
Yeah,
12%
sure.
of that.
Hmm.
So
So
that's
there's
Just off the range question for a minute, there's a question I've been wanting to ask. How do you get your washers going on the, I mean, the wipers don't always come on. At the moment, I've got a dirty screen. I don't know how to get the washers happening.
there's actually an icon at the bottom bar of the screen.
There's an icon for the windscreen wipers, but not for the washers.
Oh, for the washers, you just press the left stalk. There's a button from the left, and if you just press it lightly, it only turns the wipers on. But if you press it a little bit harder, the wash fluid comes out.
Press and hold.
Oh, on the left, push
Yes,
it in.
Correct. Push
Press
it in.
and hold, and the windscreen wipers will go and the water will start squirting. If you just press and release,
great.
the wipers will go.
Correct.
Okay.
And so it's the opposite. If you press the button on the right, it puts the car into park on your right stalk. So
Yes.
it's got the same button like that on the left stalk, which is for the washer fluid and the wipers.
Okay.
But yeah, what I was going to say is obviously there'll be various different variables that will affect your range, all to a different degree. So, you know, we talked about, you know, the tyres and the fact that you've got new tyres, but you've got them pumped up at 42 PSI, which is, I think, what Tesla recommends. I think Harold was saying that the tyres can take up to 50 PSI. Is that correct?
yeah. So if you look on the sidewall of the tire, it'll have max inflate, and in your tires it'll be 50. Now, I'm not recommending you inflate them to 50. I can report that I do almost all the time whenever I remember it to do so. And it's actually a cold inflate pressure. It's not the total pressure. So it's when your car is cold. And mind you, you don't have to drive very far to warm up your tires. So you'll actually see on a cold day, whatever the pressure is, you drive for a couple of kilometers and you'll gain a couple of PSI. Of course, you can see that on the bottom of your screen. You just swipe, I think it's left, to get the tire pressures, which will show once your car has driven more than 100 meters or so. But you could certainly pump them up to say 45 PSI very safely, and you'll get slightly better range or efficiency.
Well, a noticeable difference. So I did that on both our Holden Volt, which has got a 51 PSI max inflate on the tyres. So I pumped that up to 45, and I did that on the Tesla as well. And on both cars, it had a noticeable difference to the range. But that's the tyres. Obviously, then it's the temperature, you know, the weather, and whether you're, you know, have to overcome water and, you know, windscreen wipers on and heater and all that sort of stuff. But probably the two biggest factors or variables that affect range would be acceleration and speed. So speed, obviously, because of the wind resistance, but acceleration, just to put it into context, I was talking to Harold about this morning. So Harold, you were saying that they were saying with the Model S Plaid, the quarter mile, if you were to drive the car at that speed, at that acceleration, which is 0 to 100 in about 2 seconds, so basically foot right down, that car's got 400 miles of range. Who wants to guess how much range you would get? Oh, don't put it up.
Sorry.
The question. Very good. So who wants to guess as to how much range you would get if you were to just drive the car, just pedal down?
About 40 or 50 kilometres. Or
On the drag strip.
400 miles range, yeah, okay. 40, 50, Nigel, anyone else?
a clue.
Okay, we'll put up the answer.
24
Sorry,
miles.
so you're driving flat out. You're just accelerating to flat
This is
out and
on
then
a-
leaving it there.
On a drag
Metal to
strip.
metal.
What's
Okay.
your
Driving it
what's
like
the
you
top
saw
speed?
150 miles.
150 mile an hour.
Yeah, so
I'm sure it goes quicker than that.
So Richard, did you say 24 Ks or miles?
I'll say, so it uses 2%, quarter mile, work it out, 25 miles.
Cool. Okay. Well, we can report that the answer is at 95% is 8.7 miles. So that's let's
Wow.
call that 15 kilometers of range from a car that can do over 600 kilometers on a suburban street. It can do 15 kilometers on a drag strip.
Wow.
and that's not anything that's particular to a electric car or a Tesla. It's just physics. So whether it's an internal combustion engine or a electric car, doesn't matter. I mean, the fact is the electric car can accelerate a lot faster. So it uses up the energy a lot faster. But if you could get a ICE car to accelerate as fast, it would burn up the fuel as fast.
Well, I think a Ducati Veyron at top speed, which is using a lot of energy, can only travel
25 miles.
It wasn't very much. Yeah, it was 50 Ks, not even, or maybe
Yeah,
20 Ks.
25 miles, I think.
Yeah, it just guzzles the fuel. So that's a classic example of
Well, it's
what
using
happens.
1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
That's what the Plaid has, 1,100 horsepower.
Yeah.
So getting back to the range thing, what you
Yeah.
need to do, Angela, is just get used to your car. Obviously, you're mainly driving it around town, but when you do other trips, you will get accustomed to how it's behaving. And as has been alluded to before, there's speed and acceleration are big factors. There's also prevailing winds. So if you're driving into the wind, it's almost the equivalent of driving that many kilometers per hour faster. So if you've got, say, a 10 kilometer an hour headwind, it's almost the equivalent of driving nearly 10 kilometers an hour faster than you normally would. Now, this all happens on petrol cars as well. It's just that, because you fill up your tank on a petrol car once a week or whatever it is, no one really takes track of the efficiency of their cars, or they don't really bother. It's just in the Tesla, of course, it's a lot more visible because you can see minute by minute, and it's even plotted the actual efficiency of the car. The other thing is that was mentioned earlier was wet weather. So when you've got very wet roads, and this happens to all cars, your tires are actually pumping water. So, and sometimes it's many liters of water a minute that they are pumping away from the road and away from the car. And that again is wasting energy, imparting momentum on the water to pump it away and to move it away. So that also can be a factor as well, which I think I had an email from someone, I forget the gentleman's name, but he actually mentioned that. I think it was just looking, Doug McNabb, because he also had an interesting anecdote about driving down to Bunbury into the wet, and then coming back, it was also partially wet. And then when it dried up past Mandurah, he noticed that, north of Mandurah, he noticed that his efficiency then improved dramatically. One thing to note, and I think Nigel would know this too, is, I forget where is it, Nigel, where the road goes, the Forest Highway goes from smooth tarmac to basically chip seal.
It's about at the junction of the Kwinana Freeway and the Forest Highway. And that makes
that's just south of Mandurah, isn't it? That's past that bridge.
Just past Pinjarra.
Past Forest Highway, past Pinjarra Road.
Yes, yeah. So Doug McNabb also had that interesting sort of anecdote as well to bolster that argument.
Because you're losing energy now to the noise. So the noisier the road, the less efficient car.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? I'm going to ask a question on behalf of Sarah. She's been very quiet, but she's got to do a trip. She gets her car on Friday. She wants to drive to Kojonup. She's in a performance. She said, will she get there or does she need to stop at Williams to recharge?
Be in a performance because it's got a bigger battery.
Yeah.
Well, so Angela, Sarah, make sure you do what Angela did and email the dealership and just make sure that they charge the car to 100% when you take delivery.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be step number one. So make sure you have a charged car. But performance, how far is Kojonup from Osborne Park?
300 k's.
Yeah, you should be right. You should be right in performance. But yeah, if you're ever in doubt, just slow down a bit. But yeah, you should be right.
And Sarah, all you do is navigate to Kojonup. So just put in Kojonup as the town. I mean, you could put the actual, I think it's Koja Place is where the fast DC charger is. So that's just in Kojonup there. Good thing is, of course, it's actually free to recharge. But just you just put Kojonup as the destination, and as we described, when you press the up arrow at the bottom of your screen, which you haven't seen yet, and you go into trips, sorry, consumption energy, and then you select trips or trip, it will then plot the estimated energy usage all the way to your destination at Kojonup.
Hang on,
and
I can show.
It'll probably say that you're going to have 20% left or something like that.
So that's what Hal's talking about. This is on my car. Excuse the dust on the screen, but this is heading for Jurien Bay back. And if I go across one photo, you get a view that looks like this, and it'll estimate your arrival percentage on this trip. And this had a bit of a headwind this trip, so closer to the thing, you see that we were falling below. But you can basically track your consumption all the way down.
And there's lots of warnings.
It was even better on the next leg.
And if it looks like you're not going to reach it, it will start beeping at you and tell drop your speeds to get there without having to charge. And
it's amazing how well this does it. So this leg we went from 90%, 260 odd Ks, and we ended up at 17% at home. So yeah, there's my son in Jurien, but and he was driving, not me. So his right foot is slightly better than mine. But still, the curve is generally pretty accurate. And if you put in your destination, it'll draw you that curve, and you can basically leave it up while you're driving and see how close you're tracking. And it'll continually reassess it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
a lot of warnings. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say I can definitely confirm that also takes into account elevation changes.
Yeah.
So as you're going through Armidale and you're going up and down those hills, the computer is taking all of that into account. So don't stress about that. It when I go down the red hill, it tracks the curve up and down the hill. Like,
one thing it doesn't take into account is the wind. I mean, it does, it does change the numbers based on your most recent driving history. But if there was no wind and all of a sudden you were to hit, headwind like Ken, at the end of his leg, then that's something that it can't really take into account, I suppose.
What will be interesting is I'm going down on the Saturday when the weather's fine. I'm coming back on the Sunday when it's raining.
Hi, bossy boy.
So yeah, when you're coming back, just you'll notice quite a difference in the rain. Just make sure that you charge. So yours is a performance. So probably the best way to do it is the way Ken does it, and the way most of us do it is charge to 90-95%, and then just top up the last few percent, an hour before you leave. But yeah, look, even if you charge to 100%, and even if it sits there at 100% for as long as it doesn't sit at 100% for hours and hours on end, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. So basically precondition the car before I leave seems to be the big tip.
Yep. And because what you're doing is you're using the electricity from the power point to heat up your car rather than your battery once you're on the road. So, and you're heating up the battery.
So this is one of the pro tip videos on our Tokwa YouTube page. And what I'm saying in really dulcet tones is you can then basically put the trip up to 100. And I'm just doing a time lapse. And over the next hour, it'll get to the full rate. And this is sort of in real time. So you can see the first, if we just take that back, from here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, like the first 5% is really quick. And then the last couple of percent is super slow. It hasn't even finished yet. It's still packing in charge.
This will be on your Model X.
This is the Model X, yes.
Well, you can see on that video the kilowatt rate dropping as you go. So it starts reasonably high, and by the last little bit, it's down to 3 kilowatts, 2 kilowatts, 1 kilowatt.
Oh yeah, sorry, yes. So we'll just do that again here.
Yeah. Well, that's something to remember is both Sarah and I just charge off a normal power point. We'll just be charging at 2 kilowatts. So it's very slow.
Yes, absolutely.
It is, but for that last 5%, actually, it doesn't make any difference because even if you're charging off a high power charger, you're only going to be drawing 2 to 3 kilowatts anyway. So the trick is do that long haul to 90-95%. And again, the story is different for the SR Plus than it is for the long range and performance because the battery is slightly different. But certainly having a low power power point is not going to be a showstopper for that last few percent. It's not going to actually make it go any faster.
Does the performance take longer to charge than like
the
standard?
Only insofar primarily because it's got a bigger battery.
It's about 50% bigger, the battery.
Right.
It's about 78 or something kilowatt hours versus about 55 for the new ones.
The other thing as well, I don't know if it's worth mentioning that, on the long range and the performance, you don't really want to regularly charge it to more than 90%. You'll have the slider on the app and it will it's kind of sticky as Harold's kind of showing there. But with the standard range plus now, if it's one of the ones that's come from Shanghai, it'll have the LFP battery that you can regularly charge to 100% and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, so the performance Model 3s and the long range Model 3s and the older standard range Model 3s that have a VIN that starts with 5YJ or something like that, not LRW, you'll have this sort of screen where you'll have daily tick marks and then trip. So you should, in these cars, set your daily charging limit to no more than 90%, which is the second last marker here. If you've got a Shanghai built SR Plus, it won't even have these words daily or trip. It'll just have the little tick marks, and you are absolutely able to charge it at 100% all day, every day, and you never have to worry about it. In the other cars where you've got the daily and the trip bits, you can safely go to 100%, but you should do it on a trip and not every day. Because if you do, and then you can see there on the video, it actually shows, you can actually do the same thing on your app as well. But you can absolutely do it on road trips. If you forget and you've accidentally left it at 100% for the longer range cars, you'll get like a little message after a few charging sessions that recommend that you lower the maximum charging level. And in fact, if you just go okay, it will then automatically lower it to the 90% mark. Yep.
Okay, so I can charge to 100 for the trip to Koji, but don't do it on a regular basis.
No, you can. Well, you can do it semi-regularly, but don't let your car fester at 100% for longer than necessary. In other words, you could sort of do it for an hour beforehand and then do it. But look, after your first trip, in fact, if you left Perth at 90% and you plot your trip to Kojonup, as long as a car says it'll have at least 10% left or 20% left, then just go that way. Or if you want, rather than waiting around, just have a quick break at Williams, have a coffee, and in half an hour, you'll get another 25 Ks range. Because your car, no,
Okay.
sorry, more than that, you'll get, you'll get 30 odd Ks range in half an hour at Williams.
Okay.
Before there's a supercharger. Once there's a supercharger, it's all different. But just at the destination charger, if you want it, if you're feeling nervous, just top off at Williams while you're having a comfort break or a coffee or a snack or something like that. One principle in EV driving is, it's still like the ABC, always be charging. But what you want to do is try and charge when you've got something else useful to do. So at Williams, if it's useful for you to have a coffee or a break or have a look around, then plug your car in. So that way it's charging while you're doing something useful, as opposed to having to stop what you're doing, plug in and just sit there by the car doing nothing. You want to sort of combine it with something else so it doesn't.
But even if you had to do that, at least you've got a TV and Netflix and other things that you can use to occupy yourself rather than sitting in a boring car.
True.
Indeed. And speaking of which, you'll probably find you've obviously heard that you can watch Netflix, YouTube videos in your car, but you can actually watch ABC, iView, SBS On Demand, 9 Now, and 7, whatever it's called. The way you do that is you just go to YouTube and look up TOCWA, so Tesla Owners Club, and then you just bring up any of our prior videos. So I'll just give you an example here. And when you look down on your screen and you go show more, these links here, you can actually press on these in your touchscreen under the YouTube app, and you can watch iView, Disney Plus, Stan, 7 Plus, 9 Now, and 10 Play.
And that's in full screen mode as well. It will take up the whole full screen.
Yes, yeah, indeed. And if you're suffering from insomnia, you know, you can sometimes score yourself 3 hours of last week's Ask Us Anything. You know, I think our record is bigger than Ben-Hur. It was something like over 4 hours. But,
and does that use power? Does that use range?
A little bit.
While you're watching?
No. I
Doesn't
don't
matter, you're
really
plugged
think
in.
so. If the screen is already on, like if you're in the car,
yeah,
the screen will be on, the touch screen. So I don't think having it streaming a video would use that much more.
But if you're in the car, you know, you'd probably have the heater on.
Yeah.
You know, and
but
you're
certainly
probably
if you're
adjusting the seat and
yeah, but if the other case is if you're not in your car and the car is closed and you haven't got your air conditioner on, you haven't kept the climate on, then that's obviously the most efficient state that your car could be in. Actually, that dovetails very nicely into something that Sarath, who's not with us tonight, actually mentioned, and he was a bit concerned with. And to be honest, because I don't use my car in the way he does, I didn't realize it was such a big deal. And that's the thing of Sentry mode. So Sarah, you're not familiar with Sentry mode, and Angela, you've probably not played with Sentry mode. But that's basically where you can use the surround cameras around your car while you're not with the car. It can keep the cameras on and then monitor all events around the car. It continually records into a memory device, a memory stick. And if something happens, so if someone gets close to the car or someone hits the car, it will record I think it's a couple of minute clip of that event and store it. But in doing so, it keeps the driving computer and cameras active. And I must admit, I didn't really pay much attention to how much energy that did use. Now, Sarath has got a SR Plus, and he was concerned that overnight, his car had about 5% less range than when he went to bed. And in the 24-hour period, I actually did some sums, and it works out to about 11% if you have Sentry mode on.
Okay.
The car consumes about 250 watts in keeping the computer alive, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 250 watts over 24 hours is about 6,000 or 6 kilowatt hours. Now on an SR Plus,
it's a bit, to put it into context, it's a bit like the old incandescent light globes. It's the 100-watt ones, the really bright ones. It's like having 2.5 of those on.
Yeah, 24/7. And so it's 6 kilowatt hours per day. And in a 55 kilowatt hour battery pack that an SR Plus has got, that's about 11%. So it's actually not a trivial amount of energy. Now, what you can do is set, under the settings for Sentry mode, you can actually exclude home, exclude work, and exclude favorites. So if you've got your car in a garage, then the chances of someone breaking in and, you know, it being important for you to have recorded that is almost zero. So you certainly should exclude home. And by the way, there is actually a pro tip video on our YouTube channel on how to actually set your work and your home destinations. It is pretty easy. When you look at Navigate, you just basically press, because it hasn't been set yet, just press set home. And then you can also press set work. And in the video, it also shows how to actually redo that if you move home or change work or whatever. So by keeping the Sentry mode off at home, you're going to save yourself at least 12 hours of energy wastage, if you want to call it that. Just a quick number that's interesting is if you keep your car going for 24 hours on Sentry mode, it's 6 kilowatt hours, which is approximately $1.75 per day that it's actually costing to have Sentry mode run. Most cars do about 38 Ks a day. So they're probably driving for about an hour. So you could say that on average, if the car's parked, it'll be using Sentry mode for 23 hours. That's about $1.68 or $1.69, I think, Pete.
Yeah, $1.68.
Which is about $600 a year, just in the Sentry mode. But
just on the electricity, yeah.
Just an electricity cost. If it's at full tariff. If you're charging off solar, it's between 0 and not very much. If you're paying for fast DC charging, it could be, you know, nearly twice that. Oh, and speaking of charging, a great pro tip for all new owners is if you've bought your car in your own personal name, as opposed to a business name, go on the Synergy website and search EV tariff. And you can then get on Synergy's EV tariff as an EV owner, and you'll get a 30% discount on your power bill for the hours, for any power that's consumed between 11 PM and 4 AM. And there's no other sting in the tail. There's no other higher tariff rates at other times of the day to compensate. It's just a flat discount between 11 PM and 4 AM. But only do that if you've bought the car in your own personal name and not a business name.
Okay.
Speaking of Sentry mode, there's another setting which allows you to automatically record. I think it's about 20 or 30 seconds prior to you using the horn. So it's record on honk or something like that.
Yep.
Which is quite useful. So because the idea is if you're honking at someone, you probably want that, you know, probably doing it for a reason. You probably want that footage saved. So what it does, it overwrites old footage once the USB stick in the glove box gets full, but it won't override those bits that you've saved.
And in fact, dovetailing into that, that's a good point about the glove box with the memory stick in it. If you open your glove box, which you can do at the left-hand side, lower left-hand side of your touchscreen, there is no physical glove box button. It's on the actual touchscreen. When you open it, just familiarize yourself with where that memory stick is, because unfortunately it actually comes out of the ceiling or the top part of the glove box. And if you're not familiar with where it is, if you say threw a book in there or some larger object into the glove box, you might knock that memory stick. So it's useful just to be aware where it is so that you know not to knock it and potentially dislodge it or break it.
Harold, is that USB Type C or Type A?
That one's a Type A in the glove box.
Right.
I believe the other outlets are Type C.
Yeah. Yes, they are. It didn't say anywhere what it was in the glove box. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah,
it looks Type A.
Yeah. Then there's 2 Type C in the front and 2 Type C in the back, just above the vents. And yeah, so there's 5 altogether.
And there's also a 12-volt outlet. And in fact, we can actually show you the 12-volt outlet. It's in your center console. And it is called charge. No, not that one. Oh, here we go. This one. Sorry, I just had to pedal a little bit hard to find it. Sorry, I don't know why that just did that. Just speak amongst yourselves. You made it hard for me there,
Richard.
Richard.
Sorry, I've made that hard, did I?
Yeah, no, you made it hard for me because when I opened this, I'm gonna have to open it as a partial screen because it's full screen. It doesn't really work that well.
If we're talking amongst ourselves, I'm going to say to Sarah, really, you have, as long as you leave with a full charge, you'll have absolutely no trouble getting to Kojin up whatsoever. And but please report back. It's a really nice, fun drive. We really enjoyed our first big road trip. It was great.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. And first trip's magical.
Is it Sarah or Sarah?
It's Sarah, but it's okay.
So I was looking for another Sarah. I thought there'd be another Sarah there somewhere.
Sorry, it is Sarah. My apologies, Sarah. That's my bad.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Even Angela was calling me Sarah. So what? All good.
So I don't know if you could see that. So basically, Richard Cooper was just showing under the center console. Take the little tray out.
Oh, that's one of his special trays.
No, that's the stock one.
Oh, that's the stock one. Okay.
Yeah. But this is the old model. This is my old 2019. I don't know where the new ones are.
I think they're similar.
In
the same place.
I was
Yeah,
going to
the
say,
new
I
one
don't
doesn't have the little
tray.
tray thing.
Yeah.
I've ordered one.
At the back, there's a flop
Mine
line
didn't have one.
back and there's nothing at the front. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's just two quite big, deep holes. But I've ordered the doohickeys and they're like $20 or something off eBay.
Yeah.
So Harold, I had a very interesting experience the other day. So I'd like to share with the group.
Yes, Jared.
It's not the AA meeting, is it? Oh no, it's a Tesla meeting. No, it's
CT meeting.
It's it was a whole different experience, and I know that Pete's going to like this one. So I went to go for a drive, and the free app that you get with the audio, forget what it's called now, it'll come to me in a second, Spotify, wouldn't work, which was life-threatening. Couldn't get any music going at all. And I had to ring Harry at Tesla because I couldn't find your number, Richard. You were my next call. Or actually, I was going to ring Harold as well. But I rang Harry from Tesla, who then instructed me to hold down the 2 spin toggles on the steering wheel, which then shuts the computer down. and then restarted the computer, and then, of course, the app came back up, and then sign it to Tesla, which it has a button there you sign, because with the performance, you get 12 months connectivity with the car, and you get Spotify with that. But I didn't know about the two, holding down the two toggles for 15 seconds, Pete.
Yeah, there's two types of resets. There's a soft or a hard reset. The soft reset you can do, it's not recommended, but physically you can do it while still driving the car. The hard reset, so the soft reset is exactly as you said. You've got to hold down both of the buttons. It's roughly about 10 seconds, sometimes not even that long. It's as long as it takes before the screen goes all black, and then you can let them go. And then it takes roughly a minute, sometimes a little bit more than a minute, for the T logo to obviously come up. So that's a soft reset, and you can keep driving the car. Good question is whether the indicators still work, because you can put the stalk down, but you can't hear anything because the audio goes as well. So not sure if the indicators actually work on the outside.
It does.
Yes, they do.
They do. Okay, that's good to know. And the hard reset is doing the same thing, but you've got to have your foot on the brake as well. So it's left, right, and foot on the brake, and that's a hard reset. So if the soft reset doesn't work, you can try the hard reset.
So the soft reset was 2 at the same time?
Correct.
And the hard reset's 1, 2, and then the
No, the hard reset, same thing, but you just add the foot on the brake.
At the same time, okay.
Actually, I think that's actually a furphy. What you do is for a more deeper reset, you just hold down the buttons longer. I thought
until the T logo comes back.
Yeah, until the Tesla logo comes up, something like that.
I did this because my ABC wasn't working, and it worked. It was a bit freaky because I thought I'd lost it all, but it all came back. It took a while.
And the funny thing is, you can do it while you're driving.
Yeah,
quite
I did
safely.
it.
And you can't see the speed limit. You can't see anything. There's nothing to see. Which is a
I've
little
done
bit
it
strange.
twice whilst driving. I've had to do it twice whilst driving.
Oh,
I've done it a few times. It's no drama at all.
No.
You're in traffic, you just follow the traffic.
The other thing also is if you have a problem, or if something's occurring that shouldn't be occurring, and once you try that reset, then you can log it into your app, even if you don't have any intention of actually taking it in. Just log an appointment into the app, and it comes up on Tesla's end that you've logged an appointment, and obviously describe it and put it under the correct category. And I've done this twice, and then once I found that within 2 hours it was remotely fixed, so Tesla can actually dial into your car remotely.
That's what Harry said, the same thing, that they could dial in if there was an issue. And they will dial, it doesn't matter what time of the day is, apparently. It's 24 hours a day, apparently.
Yeah. Well, and the other one I had, it happened overnight. So I woke up next morning and it was fixed. And then in the morning, you just get rid of you just cancel the appointment.
Yeah, they can actually, when I had an incident and I put in a log for an appointment, I got a phone call from them, and they said, "What time did that happen 2 days ago?" And I said, "I think it was 5 to 9. They said, "Oh, jolly good." And they actually came back to me a few hours later and said, "Yeah, we looked at your logs. We know what's happened. We've corrected it." So they can look back at the logs that had happened sometime in the past. I don't know how long they go back for, probably quite a way.
Yeah, so the moral of the story is don't drive naked, I guess, because they could look at the logs.
Apparently that indoor camera isn't activated it yet, but they're actually looking at activating it soon. So, but you've got the option. Yeah.
Just on that, Pete, I've actually got the latest update here. The cabin camera has actually been activated to detect it and to make sure the driver's actually paying attention to the roads. So that's something new.
I better remember to do my hair.
Yeah, actually, Tesla have stated that that footage of the internal camera doesn't leave the car.
Correct.
So it's only for the computer to analyze your movements or what you're doing, but it doesn't actually leave the car. Whereas the other footage can.
That's
Does
the
the update notes?
Yeah, exactly. So
If,
presumably,
if that means that you don't get the autopilot nag on the steering wheel.
Nope. No,
But
it's gone.
part of that,
Both. Yeah. Okay.
part of that is if you don't share your data, it doesn't send them. But if
True.
you share your data, then who knows?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm still getting the nag on the steering wheel. It has gone a bit longer.
Well, you haven't got any hair.
Well, you can't see it.
Oh no.
Version 2021.4.18.2.
Yeah, that's
the
one I've
version
got,
I've got,
18.2. I still get the nag.
Ah,
It only works for people with hair.
Right. Okay. I'll wear a wig.
but Harold, what you were saying earlier is, so it obviously looks at you to see if you're paying attention. So that footage of you never leaves the car. But if you were, doing something silly, no doubt it gets logged. So no doubt that would actually be in the logs. So the footage of you.
So if you're not looking, if you're on your, actually, very greenly only, I think it was greenly only, he's actually done quite a few experiments because he's gotten into the cars and he can hack into what the car is analyzing. And the things that the car measures is, for instance, if you're using a mobile phone while driving, if you're looking away, if you've got sunglasses on, looking away.
Picking your nose, maybe?
Sorry?
Picking your nose? I mean, was it
No,
definitely not going to.
It'd be going off too often for that. Number of people you pull up at the lights and they've got their elbow up their nose.
Yes, but no, yeah. Just as well, it's a little bit later in the evening, but I mean, I don't know if many people can do that. Anyway, moving right along.
The party tricks are coming out now. There we go.
I have a similar trick. Remember, Harold?
Here we go. There you go.
Now, it's probably a good time to refresh. Angela did tease us that she had not enough memory, really? That's all right. Sorry. I'll try that again. She did have an up-to-date photo at Williams, and unfortunately, nothing much has happened since the last photos we got. So, so that's the latest. That's the latest one that Angela took.
Angela mentioned that she thought there would be 4, but it's not. There's only the 3 that
so
are closest, and the far one's just for the big control unit.
Yes, that's right. So there's a stall here, one there, and that's the cabinet. Now, since we're doing show and tell, Shane also just emailed me an image which sort of shows what can happen. And I think Ken also did this, but this is a slightly lower state of charge, which is a projection where he was a little bit hungrier than initially thought. So whereas it was going to predict about, I don't know, 20%, he ended up at 8%. But mind you, he probably started off at 90%.
Oh, it started off pretty high, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the trip from Albany to Bridgetown with the rain. So you can sort of see where I hit the wet road there. Sort of 50 odd Ks in. And yeah, just the gents saying that you might get, you get more comfortable with the car getting low. One of the things I really wanted to achieve on this trip was to just run the car really low and see what happened. Just so that I flushed the whole range anxiety thing out of my system. And this trip really did that really well. And now that I've learned that trip thing's on there, I mean, I noticed that I could slow down and the little line, it wouldn't take very long. The little line would just pop back up and it'd be up higher, and then you start belting it a little bit and the line would drop down again. And it was really, I found it to be really quite accurate and really quite handy to just watch that trip line on the long trip. It was good.
Did someone say how low can it go?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it can go to 0. So those of us who have, well, actually, Carmen.
Harry told me he took his less than 0.
Well, I did, but Carmen took hers to 3 Ks left, I think it was.
Yep.
On a trip to Albany. 4 Ks on a trip to Albany.
And he was made a voyage too.
And it kept warning, not enough to get to your destination. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can actually go to 0. I'm just trying to find on a Twitter feed. I mean, I've taken mine to 0 several times, but not obviously recommending you do that, but it can be done, especially since you know that whatever speed you're doing, if you need to get a bit more distance, just go a little bit slower and it'll make it. But yeah, I'm just trying to show.
But in the made in China, the Shanghai Model 3s with the LFP batteries, apparently they've got the biggest buffer out of all the Teslas, so roughly an extra 5 kilowatt hours. But obviously the idea is not to rely on that, but yeah, it's there if you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, basically, you can quite thoroughly trust what your car is saying and just react to that. And in fact, your car will warn you. It'll either say charging required to reach destination, which is quite pessimistic. Sometimes you can overcome that by going even slower, but other times it'll say things like, to reach your destination, go no faster than 100 kilometers per hour, or sometimes 90 kilometers per hour. And if you generally stick to what it recommends, it will get you there.
Yeah.
That's comforting.
It says all of it actually. As you go along, it tries different messages.
I will make you listen.
It throws
I'll
everything
convince you
out
somehow.
and see what sticks.
I was lucky because I had Harold on the line and then I kept repeating what he was saying. So,
yeah,
yes.
That was quite interesting because I was actually in Denmark at the time.
And it was dark. It was dark and I didn't know where I was going, really. So I didn't want to take a wrong turn. So Harold helped me get there with 4 Ks.
Yeah, it's not a bad road trip.
Harold's actually got a pretty good voice for a GPS voiceover person.
That trip meter also, I mentioned earlier that it takes account of the hills and the terrain. It also takes account of the speed limit as well. I've noticed that. It assumes you're going to drive at the speed limit, but if you manage to slipstream yourself, if you're in traffic and you sit like on the autopilot thing, if you sort of 5 or 6 behind a car, then that line will just gradually creep up as you're driving and it'll go above it. And or if you're on a big open road and you're a naughty Vegemite and you go a bit quicker, then it'll sit lower.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's really quite clever.
If you're following the glide slope, then you're doing okay. If it starts going down a bit, you need to slow down. If you're doing better than it thinks, then just keep doing what you're doing.
It actually auto-corrected when I was going to hit a curb as well.
When you say overcorrected, do you mean it went too far, or?
No, I was getting too close to the center island and it moved itself. I got a bit of a shock, but it did it.
Yes, that's actually lane departure assist. So that's a good setting to have turned on on your car.
Yeah.
So that's under the car symbol. There's like a vehicle symbol, and under, I think it's driving or autopilot.
Yes.
They have lane depart. There's a lane departure warning, which will give you like a tone. So if you haven't got your indicator on and you're drifting out of the lane, it will then warn you with a tone. But if you have assist on, it will actually pull the car back at least once or twice, which is very handy.
Yes.
Nice handy.
Unless you actually, I've got at the end of my road, I've got a single lane that goes into 2 lanes to go around a roundabout, and I want to go in the left lane and it won't let me. It wants to go in the right lane, and it pulls me over, and I go, no, get here.
The good thing is you can overcome any of that sort of thing with 2 kilograms of force. So it's a little bit more than a nag needs half a kilogram, whereas to take control back of the steering wheel, you just need 2 kilograms of force, which is actually, it's like holding a bottle of milk. It's very.
I just used the brakes because I wasn't sure what was happening, and it stopped doing it.
Yeah.
So how,
go on,
sorry, did you say that the force that you need to apply to take over from autopilot differs?
Yes, it differs from the nag. So the autopilot, it needs 2 kilograms of force to dislodge it, but half a kilogram to give it that to tell you that you can tell it that you're still paying attention. So you're still sort of holding the wheel.
Yeah, but what I have noticed is if it's done something really wrong, for instance, if you turn it on with the white lines still present and then the white lines go and it starts to drift off and you quickly adjust, I find you need to use quite a bit of force. But let's say it's just sort of drifting over slowly. If you just go the opposite direction without a huge amount of force, but you leave it there for a long time, it will then disengage with absolutely minimal force. So I'm not sure if there's another variable to it, which is the time spent trying to correct it, whether that plays into the equation at all.
I also wonder if, because it wants to go left and you're holding it right, it's gradually applying more force. So you're countering with more force until you hit that limit and it goes, all right, you have control.
Yeah, because if you maintain it in a certain direction, if you just lock onto the steering wheel and don't let it move, and the car naturally wants to go a little bit to the right, as Nigel says, it'll apply a bit of force, and there's a little bit of play in the steering wheel as well.
Sure.
And it'll just keep applying it until it gets past that threshold. And as Nigel says, it'll just quit and go, well, I'm beyond my limits, so therefore you're overriding me.
Yeah, I still have this feeling like it must have 2 inputs. One is the force, and the other one must be a time input. It just feels like, and I understand what you're saying, Nigel, makes complete sense. But yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think I am applying more force by holding it there longer, because even what I've tried to do to sort of disprove that theory was, when I had it there for a bit of time, I tried to sort of ease off a bit, and then it would still let me override it. So even though I was easing off on the pressure a little bit, but because I did have pressure there for an extended period of time, yeah, that's where I get that theory from, that it must use a time override as well as force.
Guys, can I just ask an associated question, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Am I right in thinking that when you nudge the wheel and you stop it auto steering, it then just defaults to whatever that's called with the intelligent cruise control?
Yeah, yeah. So if you touch the brakes, it disengages everything. So you're in full control. But if you take over purely using the steering wheel and you don't touch the brake, it's the cruise control still stays on. So you can steer the car, but the car's still automatically accelerating and braking to stay at the desired speed.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of figured out from the testing I've done. But what I haven't tested is if you then go and turn off the auto steer in your settings, if you then do the double tap on your stalk, will it then just do the cruise control bit?
No, whenever you do double tap, it does autopilot, does both. If you just want the cruise control, you just do a single tap.
But if it's turned off auto steer.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've turned off auto steer.
If you turned off auto steer and then you double tap, it goes back into autopilot.
Cool, got you. Okay, yeah, I just haven't had a chance to test that, and I just wondered. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
Good question, but yeah,
Andy, that might actually be the answer to one of my questions. Is it seems that sometimes the car will detect the speed limit change, you know, from 100 to 80 or 80 to 100, and it'll accelerate and decelerate accordingly. But other times it doesn't, and I haven't quite figured out when it does detect, when it does make the change or when it doesn't make the change.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and it doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason, except that one thing that it definitely doesn't recognise is the electronic signs. So, you know, when there's a roadwork sign and there's the big trailer there with the, so if that has a big speed sign in orange lights or whatever it is, it never picks those up. But with the street signs on the side, sometimes it picks them up faster than other times. So I've noticed that it might, you know, the speed limit might change from 100 to 80, and you've gone past the 80 sign, and, you know, and I'm about to hold down and do a bug report to say that it hasn't picked it up, and then it picks it up. Whereas other times it does it almost instantly as soon as you go past it.
Yeah, it depends upon whether it's single lane or 2 or 3 lanes, the road that you're on, and whether you've got full self-driving engaged or not. So on the single lane, with full self-driving engaged, you're doing 100 and you're entering into a town, it goes to 80, 60, 50, it will automatically decrease.
And that's the most important point that Nigel's making there is he said the word town. So when you go bush, so Angela and Sarah, you'll get this, and it's a beautiful thing. You can be doing 110 on the highway. As you approach a town, as the speed limit goes down and the car either optically looks at the speed sign, which it can do now, or it's got the data in the mapping database, it will reduce speed automatically through a town, all the way down to 50 or 40 kilometers per hour. And as you leave the town, as you pass each different increasing speed zone, it will speed back up to either the speed limit that you were that is there, such as 110, or if you're doing, say, deliberately doing 100 kilometers an hour, if you set your cruise control to 100 kilometers an hour in 110 zone, when it goes back out the other side of the town, it will resume at that 110. And it seems to do that nearly everywhere where there are towns, but it does it virtually nowhere in Perth. And
I find it does it about 50% of the time in my experience in Metro Perth.
Oh no, nowhere near.
Yeah, right.
On some roads,
there's two other occasions where it messes up as well. One is 40 kilometers an hour for vehicles with a gross mass of over 22.5 tons. It seems to think that I should be doing 40. I'm pretty sure my car is not 22 ton. And the other one that it misses is literally around my local little town site, village, whatever you want to call it. there's a lot of 80k signs, but it seems to think that stretch of road should be a 40k sign, 40k zone or 50k zone. Until it sees the speed sign, then it sees the speed sign and it's fine, but it doesn't do the speed up or slow down. Like
some of
some
the
other times.
roads, such as out in the country, it thinks are 50, whereas they're probably 90 or 100, but it'll sit at 50. And if you're going down dual carriageways, it won't change. Because you can have your speed set at a lot faster on a dual carriageway than you can on a single carriageway. And
I'm not
the
sure
other
that's,
thing, yeah,
I'm
no,
not sure that's right, Nigel, because I've had it pick up. I've had it pick up that the 60 zone, as you're heading into Midland, there's a 60 zone, but there's an 80 zone on the ramp to get onto the highway, and it'll pick up that I'm in the 60 zone, but no, you're allowed to do 100, but I'm not allowed to do 100. I'm only allowed to do 60, but the 80 sign is meant for the ramp people.
If it's a single lane, it won't go over the speed limit or the extra bit that you've got an offset in the settings. If it's dual carriageway and it says 80, you can set your cruise control at 100 if you like, and it will stick to 100.
Oh yes, that's right.
That's three. That bit's 3 lanes.
Oh, same. You can go faster on 3 lanes, but that's one of the rules. So you can actually, there are some roads where the car will militantly not go on autopilot, will not go faster than the speed it thinks you should be going at. But that speed can be mistaken if it's optically seen, for instance, a construction zone speed sign that it's picked up, say a 40 sign, then it will think it's 40 until it gets to another sign that it can see, or until the GPS database, the mapping database speed entries have updated, which might be at another intersection or some certain distance down the road, where what you'll find is it'll do something stupid like it'll insist you have to do 40, or let's just call it the wrong speed limit, and then it'll magically sort of fix itself, even though there was no speed sign, because it relies on initially the map, which is what it used to do all the time, everywhere, and now it's got its own vision, so it can optically look at speed signs. So there's 2 different things. There's the speed it thinks the road should be at, either from a database or optically, and there's also the policy of whether you can exceed the speed it thinks you should be at. And as Nigel said, on dual carriageways, at least in most places, it seems that you can go faster than the speed limit, but on a single carriageway or other types of road, it militantly insists that it does that slow speed. Now, what you can do in autopilot is simply use your right foot and just override it manually. In fact, you've got a decision to make. Do you want the car to steer and you control the speed, or you can basically dislodge autopilot just by jiggling the wheel a bit stronger or just tapping it off. And if you manually steer the traffic aware cruise control, you can set that speed limit to anything. It doesn't care. It could be 150 for all it cares. But on autopilot, it's got a policy on certain roads, it won't exceed that limit. And something that Nigel alluded to is in some country roads where the speed limit is 110, it thinks it should be 50. And that can be quite laborious, because then you've got to basically either manually control the speed on autopilot or just flick it off autopilot and use traffic aware cruise control to do the 110 that you're entitled to do, simply because the car's database is incorrect. And I think that's something that Carmen experienced indirectly, where the car took her on the wrong way to go to Albany, because I think it wrongly thought that the road she was on was too slow. So it took her on this circuitous sort of forest, track almost, because that road had a higher speed limit. And of course, its intention is to get you to the destination in the shortest time. So sometimes it can have some weird effects. Speaking of which, because we only have one supercharger in Western Australia at the moment, something else that's really important for new users is, let's just say, if we all hopped in our cars now and navigated to Geraldton, ironically, our cars would say the first supercharger stop is in Eton. So if we all live in Perth, notwithstanding that Angela and Sarah, you don't, but if you're in Perth and you navigate to Geraldton, the initial position is go down to Bunbury, supercharge, and then try and go up to Geraldton. The irony is, by the time you got back to Perth, you'd have less charge in your car than when you started, even though you filled up fully at the supercharger. So that's one little pro tip as well, is get an overview of where the car wants you to go. Now, in the case where you select Geraldton as a destination from Perth and it says go to Bunbury, all you do is this little button in the navigation screen that says remove charging stops. And when you do that, it'll then navigate pretty much directly to Geraldton.
Oh, okay.
One little pro tip, that sometimes you caught up, you just trust what the car says. You know, the car says turn left, turn right, you know, whatever. Well, it might be taking you in the opposite direction to where you really want to be.
Can you add a charging stop there, Harold?
You can't have waypoints at the moment.
Not yet.
But he did say, you want waypoints? All right, we'll do waypoints. So it might come soon.
Yeah, but he said that in the past.
That's the second time he said, yeah, exactly. Said that on Twitter too.
And coming back to the road conditions and so on, I've also noticed that even though if you're on a dual carriageway and the car does not realise it's dual carriageway because it's a new bit, it will stick to the single carriageway speed limit. And down south on, I think it's the Bustle Highway, they've got 7 kilometres of roadworks, and they've got orange cones down each side with 60 signs all the way for roadworks, and the car will not do over 40 because of all the cones. It gets all upset.
That's dead right, Nigel. The cones, when it sees lots of cones, it presumes that the default is 40 k's, regardless of what the signs say.
Yeah.
So Sarah, getting back to your delivery experience, like I sort of alluded to briefly at the start of the show, is it will be very brief because the salespeople are going to be flat out trying to do test drives and other things. So yeah, you just need to be prepared that it's going to be quite brief, and they're not going to have a lot of time to go through all the features of the car, unfortunately.
Oh, right. So is it delivered fairly set up, well set up, or do I need to?
See you, Shane. So are you going, Shane? Yep.
I really want to jump in here. I picked up my car on the Mad Thursday. Like my delivery was supposed to be Friday. It got brought back to the Thursday. I showed up on the Thursday afternoon. My delivery experience was not even close to some of the reports I've heard. I showed up, I had as much time as I like to sit in the car. I didn't feel rushed with the guy that was handing over my car. I sat in it for quite a while because I was like, I'm just going to chill out because otherwise I'm going to cause a problem here. And Harry even come over and wished me well on my way. I had plenty of time to walk around the car and have a look and take photos. And the guy set my phone key up for me. I didn't feel rushed even a little bit.
Unusual.
Really
What time was your delivery, Shane? Your appointment?
4:30 I showed up. Oh,
yeah,
maybe
that's
I showed
probably
up about 4:25 or something like that.
That's probably why, because
there were a good dozen people around when I was there. I certainly wasn't the only one picking my car up at 4:30.
No, but I think the issue is if it's a morning pickup, you see their KPIs, they've got to get out a certain number of test drives per week. And whenever there's a delivery push on, which is sort of towards the end of most quarters, that process interferes with the rest of what they need to do. So if it's late in the afternoon, it doesn't matter because you're not doing test drives then. They've all been done and sorted.
Can I just?
Yes, Angela, go.
I had my appointment at 12 o'clock on Monday. And again, I wasn't rushed. I had plenty of time. They set up my key, explained lots of things. I went back later actually because my friend had left his car there. And then Harry helped me with a couple of other things. Like I wasn't sure how to, because my phone hasn't got cordless charging. He showed me I could charge it where the USB is in the glove box, and also showed me how I could use Spotify through my phone, things like that. Yeah, I didn't feel rushed either.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's good. That's an improvement because we've had other reports of people where it's been particularly short.
I had 10 minutes.
Yeah, I got the text message yesterday because my I think you know, Harold, mine had blown out to the 22nd of July. I got the text message yesterday to say anytime from the 28th of June. So, but it said in the text message that you get 10 minutes. And it said, but if you want a run through of the car, then follow this link and you can book a time before your pickup and they'll run through the car for you.
Right.
So I've actually booked mine for Tuesday next week.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
9:30 in the morning.
That's interesting.
So the day before, it was saying the 22nd, out to the 22nd of July, and then it came back to the 28th of June.
So in your My Tesla account, did you have a VIN allocated to you? Do you know your VIN number?
I know my VIN because I got it from the Regio form they sent for me to sign.
How long ago?
Oh, it was a couple of weeks ago.
Right, that's interesting. I thought they might have done a VIN swap on you, and maybe there was a car that they already have that's landed. That
no, I'm getting the same one that they said.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. I don't know because the ship. I thought the fourth ship isn't due until next month.
Well, it hasn't even docked yet, has it?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. That's good news, Barry. That's
Oh, absolutely. Well, as you know, it in the space of a week it blew out by 2 weeks, and then in the space of a following day it blew out another 2 days, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get the email yesterday saying anytime from the 28th of June, which wasn't convenient for me, so I booked the 29th. And the only times available either day was 9:30 or 4:30. Yep.
Well, that's great. But yeah, sorry. I mean, notwithstanding that, happily Angela was quite happy with her delivery experience. So hopefully yours should be just as happy.
31st.
Yeah, I hope so.
when I
Otherwise,
got
I'll be on the
Regio
phone with
paper.
her saying you run me through it.
Yes. Oh well. Yeah. And obviously the whole purpose of the Ask Anything is, you can get all the questions off your chest sort of before you have to go through the process. So you don't have to, you don't have to feel that you've got to ask them all these things on how to do basic functions. That's sort of our job to do that. But
what is the link to there's a link to a handbook or something. I don't know. I did see it and I've lost it.
yes.
Do you know what that is?
So under the software, is it?
No, it's under service.
Service. There is a comprehensive. It's like 180-page online document.
No, it's not the up-to-date one, though, is it?
Sorry, Barry?
It's not up to date because I was looking in it to. So I went to my account and go to my Tesla, and there's a link there to the manual for your car, but it's not because it's not the 21 model. Because
I think in your car it will be the up-to-date model.
Oh, I'm sure in the car it will be, but the one on the website isn't the up-to-date one.
No.
Hence my question earlier about
Yeah.
these sockets.
So who said
Do you
something?
mean the app, Harold?
No, not
No,
the app,
the-
no, on your screen, on your main screen, Angela.
Oh, okay.
If you look
Okay.
at, as Pete said, if you look at, so what's it?
So press the car icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and then the menus on the left appear, and the service is, I think it's the last or the second last option, and then you can go into
user manual.
Manual. What was that, Richard?
User manual, I think it's called.
User manual. There you go. Yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, basically, I would imagine that you don't. There's no settings you need to particularly change at the beginning when you first get the car, but it comes default set up.
Oh, there's a few you can set. So one will be the way the car behaves when it comes to a stop. So there's 3 modes. So you can have it in creep mode, which basically replicates that of a automatic. You can have it in hold mode, which is basically single pedal driving, where the car comes to a complete stop when you take your foot off the accelerator. And those 2 modes are probably the 2 most used. Or you could have the neutral mode or whatever it's called, but basically as soon as you take your foot off the accelerator, it just glides. So, but yeah, I mean, the one that will take it, the one that's the most different to a petrol car is the hold mode, the single pedal driving, but it's possibly the safest one in that, you know, in an emergency, if you have to take your foot off the accelerator, the car starts to slow down or brake before your foot even hits the brake. So, so that's handy. Prevents the car from rolling down the street as it would in the neutral mode, and yeah, in other situations as well.
Can I jump in here, Sarah? When you get your car, you're doing a long drive, you'll set your seat height and adjustment, all that. There's a pretty nifty lumbar support, but the button has a 4-way. It's not just out and in, it's up and down as well. So you want to learn about that so you get comfortable for your long drive. It's really quite a good lumbar setup.
It's a good
cool.
You
And you save it.
And you save it, yeah. But if you don't play with it, it doesn't move.
Okay.
Oh, yes, unless you change profiles. So when you alter like your wing mirrors or your seat position, or can you do steering wheel in a Model 3?
Yep.
Yeah. You'll notice that where I think the sales guys will put your name, or if not, you can name your profile, and right next to that name, if you change something, it will either have a button that says restore, I think it's restore, and save. So for instance, if someone hops in your car to temporarily use it and they move the seat all the way to the back and you want to undo that, presuming they haven't touched anything, you can always, as you start to sort of move your seat forwards to fix it, you'll see the button comes up with save or restore. If you hit restore, it'll restore it to what your profile was stored as or saved as.
I don't have to do anything because I have saved it as Carmen. And then if somebody else touches it, I just press Carmen and it does it itself.
Oh, yes, as long as I don't save. Sorry, yes, you're right. Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sarah, can I ask what car you've been driving, or prior to your Model 3?
A completely different car, Renault Koleos.
Okay. So if you're getting a performance, see how you go. You'll probably love the performance, which means it will affect your range. But there is another mode. So there's what's called the chill mode. So if you find that, you want to sort of ease into, that performance, you can just put it on chill mode. And it just means that it won't accelerate as quickly, it won't be as responsive.
Right. Yeah. No, it's going to be. It is an interesting change. I've just even the test drive, because I'm obviously used to a completely different style of car. But it was fun taking it around corners. I can tell you that.
Oh, you'll love it in the straight line.
Yeah, well, I guess on the road to Kojonup, I'll have to worry about the battery first, and then if I run out of battery, I'll just let it rip. I mean, if I haven't run out of battery, I can let
No,
it
you
rip.
won't. You'll have 100.
Osborne Park to Kojonup is under 300k going down.
You'll have tons of
the Albany
battery.
Highway, and
So
you
that-
can do 400 plus.
Cool.
Yeah, well, depending, you know, don't forget it's
Unless
winter.
you keep putting the right foot down heavily.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, do watch that because, well, it doesn't matter if you've got an SR Plus or a Performance Model 3. Normally in a petrol car, and when you overtake someone on the highway, you normally have to floor it, literally pedal to the metal to overtake them effectively. When you do that in your Performance 3, you'll get past them so quickly, you'll be like,
I can guarantee you it works in an SR Plus as well.
yes, and that's exactly right.
It's whiplash.
Sarah, I highly recommend Bridges Street in Albany. Go up it.
Okay.
If you like going around corners.
Yeah, okay.
I've got a Performance Model 3. I did one overtaking maneuver when I went, I did the south trip down there. I overtook 3 cars, just put my foot down and go. And I used 2% of my range in one overtaking maneuver. But I did pull in at 175, but that took like 3 seconds. These cars are very quick, let me tell you.
yes, that's what your car would have done in a simulation. That wasn't what you actually did.
No, that was when I was dreaming, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Well, he said he went 75, didn't you?
Yeah.
You got up to
Oh, sorry,
70.
I meant miles an hour. 70, not quite 70. I was doing about 70 miles an hour. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
I'm a realist. And I reckon it's safer to get past quickly than hang around on the wrong side of the road for too long.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely could not agree more. Cool. So Sarah or Angela, have you got any other questions? I mean, Sarah, it's all very, very new to you. And Angela, it's still very fresh.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just going to take it pretty easy, to be honest, because I know I've got to really adjust to technology and a new style of car. So it's kind of a shame I've got to go to Kojonup on day one. But I mean, Angela did it, so I'll do it too.
You will love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
You'll love autopilot if you try it. That's awesome.
I assure you will love it.
Very
It is
hard to work out.
fantastic.
If they're not going to run me through all of that, you just play with the screen and figure out where everything is, I guess.
No, yeah, and then you just, when you got it set up, you just double tap and you just take your foot off everything and it drives you and it's bloody awesome.
Well, actually,
Wow.
having said that, Sarah, what you might want to do is once you've gotten the car, and they probably would be keen for you to drive off into the sunset. In other words, leave the premises. So you could just sort of go anywhere around the corner, just park your car, have a look at the menus. So it's the lower right-hand corner, it's the little car symbol, and just read through them in sequence, just so you know what they all are. Now,
Right.
for instance, without wanting to bombard you with sort of information, just make sure that under the autopilot menu item, it says autopilot is enabled or on. Because some cars it might not be, which means you can't even engage it in the first place. And you can't actually turn that on unless you're stationary and in park. So just make sure that autopilot is on and available. And I think traffic aware cruise control is a similar setting. I can't quite remember that bit.
But if it's not working during the first few kilometers, don't panic, because it will tell you that it needs, it differs with every car, but it needs to
calibrate its camera.
Yeah.
It won't work when you drive out, probably.
Yeah, but that's actually a very good tip from Harold, because being going from a car with buttons that that are tactile and you can feel to a screen where every button feels the same, it's probably a good idea just to stop on the off somewhere and go through the menu like Harold said, rather than learning that while you're driving, because you might just get a bit caught up in the screen and take your eyes off the road for a bit too long. So yeah, just remember that one.
Yeah.
When are you picking the car up, Sarah?
They haven't given me a time, but on Friday sometime.
Okay.
What I did, I went. I actually had 3 test drives in the Tesla Model 3, but my third one, I literally just went up the road, parked, and went through everything like before I actually decided to buy it, just so that I knew what I was letting myself in for, basically.
Excellent.
And how it all worked.
And you can jump on YouTube
and
onto the official Tesla channel as well. That's got quite a few how-to videos, and they should be available in your app as well if you download the app. So make sure you download the app before you obviously go to the appointment. Make sure you download Plug Share and Charge Box and what's the third one? Next Charge. So yeah, download those apps so you have them ready to go, and maybe even register your credit card. But another quick tip is because you'll have it set up so that your phone is the key, and sure, you'll be able to use the 2 credit cards that they give you, which serve as a key. But one thing that I find really useful is there's an option to have the mirrors fold in when the car's locked. And that way, if you're wondering whether the car's locked or not, you can just look at the mirrors. And if the mirrors are folded, you know the car's locked.
Yeah,
you can also make it beep. You can also, there's a setting in there, you can also make it beep when it locks.
Yeah, and I've got that set as well. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yep.
There's so many settings, and also that whole thing, set it up so when it's at home, it doesn't lock if you put it in the garage.
Yeah, definitely. With the handover experience, again, I sat in the carport thing there underneath the shade thing at the front of the building. I sat there for a good 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and that's exactly what I did. I sat on their premises and went through all the menus because I figured if I went around the corner and there was something I didn't understand, I wouldn't have anyone to ask. But I just said, no, I'm just going to sit here and go through it. And they weren't at all worried. They didn't care that I was sitting there.
Oh, good. That sounds like a good plan.
I'd be doing that. Just sit there and, you know, if they come and ask you, well, which they did after about 10 minutes, they come and said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm just playing with the menus and trying to calm down because I'm pretty excited and I don't want to drive out into a busy road all excited. And they went, yeah, no worries. Well, sing out if you need anything. And 10 minutes later, Harry come up, and as I sort of started to pull out, Harry come over and said, oh, I wanted to catch you before you left. You know, good luck and wish you well. And you excited? Like, yes, I am very excited. No, they were really good. Yeah, I've only bought a couple of new cars in my life, and that was the best experience. And apparently that was the Mad Thursday. So whatever.
That's great to hear.
Hey, Sarah, I have a thought. I live 2 Ks from where you're going to pick your car up. I'm probably free on Friday afternoon. If you want to give me a hoy, I'm happy to come over and spend 10 minutes with you before you drive off into the sunset.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That's what we Tesla people do. I love it. It's great fun.
Just put your phone number up on the chat. I've just put mine up, which I was going to mention a second ago, Sarah. If you and anyone else, if you're stuck or want to phone a friend, just give me a call. But yeah, by all means, Sarah, give Richard a text or a call and he can meet you there.
I'm literally, oh, hang on, that's my name now.
I've got a question about the phone app.
There you go.
So obviously they'll set my phone up. I've already got the app on it. They'll set it up. It'll unlock. But I want my daughter to also have the app so that she can get into the car when I'm not around. Not to drive it, just that she can get in. Does the car automatically assume that the phone that unlocked it is the person who's going to drive it? So if my daughter unlocked it with the app on her phone, and then I get in the car to drive, will I then have to tell it, no, it's me?
No, it doesn't know who you are. there is a setting for, so your daughter can download the My Tesla app,
Yeah.
put in your email address and your password.
Yeah.
Now, with that, she can remotely unlock and control your car. She can unlock it. She can make it enabled to drive. You can also enroll her phone as a phone key, so that without using the Tesla app, just with the Bluetooth, when
that's what I was thinking.
her phone is nearby, it will unlock itself and enable itself to drive. That's a further option.
You can, if you wanted to prevent her from being able to drive the car, but you want to give her full access to the car, you can do what's called pin to drive. So you can set up a 4-digit pin, and without it, you can't drive. You can't put it into drive.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. It was just, if she unlocks it, will it then, when I get in, will I then have to say, hey, it's me? No?
It doesn't know who you are per se.
Okay. So I know you got your profile.
Oh yes, well you can. Sorry, so you could link her phone. Could be linked to her profile. So let's just say, if she occasionally drives the car, you can associate her phone, and I think her app with not the app. Sorry, because the app is in your credentials. It's your email address. And your password. But if you set her phone as a key, then you can associate that key with her profile, and then associate your key with your profile, which it already is by default. Now, if the two of you are nearby, there's a couple of things that can happen. It doesn't know which side of the car. Like, say if you both enter the car at the same time or approach the car at the same time, but in opposite order, like one, you're the driver, she's the driver, whatever, then it may bring up the incorrect profile. So all you do then is you just touch on the screen on the name, and then a little drop down list comes down, and you select your profile. Now the other thing that can happen too is, if both of you, if you're driving the car, you should set up both phones as Bluetooth audio, for Bluetooth audio, so that if you receive a phone call, it'll come through the speakers through Bluetooth and not to your actual handset. But what you can do is, if one of you is more likely to be the driver, you can set up a priority for Bluetooth. So when you go into the Bluetooth menu, you can set up one of the phones as the priority device, which means if both phones come in simultaneously or within a short period of time, it'll automatically direct speaker calls, Bluetooth calls to the one that's the priority phone.
Well, that would be mine. So yeah.
Yeah. So you set up yours as priority, and then hers is not priority. Now, of course, if she's driving the car by herself and your phone is not with her, doesn't matter if you are, but if your phone is not with the car, then her phone will connect to Bluetooth automatically.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Okay, thank you.
So once your phone is connected to the car with key, then automatically your Spotify can work, your music playlist can work.
Yes.
Is it hard to answer a phone, or does it basically ring and then you just, like, how do you answer a phone call?
You just like on your iPhone or your Android, you'll get a green and a red button. So it will just pop up on the screen.
On the screen, yeah.
Phone call comes in.
Oh, okay. So you just touch the screen and answer it.
And another nice thing is, if you get a text message, it will read the text message out to you, and you can dictate back to it and send it off, and it'll turn it back into text and send it off, all without taking your hands off the wheel.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So to dictate the text message, you got to hold down the right scroll button on the steering wheel. So whenever you want to give it any verbal input, you just got to hold down the right scroll button.
Right.
Just on
So
that
bec-
point, guys. My experience with our one that we've had for the last 3 weeks is that the voice input can be a little bit glitchy. So when it comes to using your phone to say, you know, ring my wife, for instance, I actually find it's just easier just to say, "Hey Siri," and it just does that. But the phone audio and so on still goes through the car. It just means that Siri just seems to understand me better for phone calls. That's my experience of recent times. Somebody did say that speaking in American accent actually helps.
Yes.
And there are a few shortcuts and a few. I mean, you can say "open butthole" and it will open the charging port for you. You can even say "open a hole," but you know, say it properly and it will open the charging port as well.
And
yeah, I found it good for the normal voice commands, you know, the standard voice commands. But when it comes to, say, saying somebody's name from your address list, it gets a little bit confused, you know. So I'd find myself having to say, "Hey, Sid, ring my wife," or whatever, you know.
So Andy, I think what you might be able to relate to is something like this.
Oh no.
Install voice recognition technology in this lift later. Voice recognition technology in a lift in Scotland. You ever tried voice recognition technology? No, they don't do Scottish accents. 11.
Could you please repeat that?
This is terrible.
11. 11. 11.
Could you please repeat that?
11. Whose idea was this? You need to try an American accent. 11. 11. That sounds Irish, don't it? Doesn't it? 11.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
Try an English accent. 11. 11. These are the same Pat England as Dick Van Dyke.
Please speak slowly and clearly.
Smart ass. 11.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
Don't understand the lingo. Away back in your own country. Ooh. Start talking to us away back to your own country. Oh, don't start, Mr. Bleeding Heart. How can you be racist to a lift?
Please speak slowly and clearly.
11. 11. 11. 11. You're just saying it the same way. I want to keep saying it to understand Scottish, buddy.
Anyway.
11.
Well, it's not that simple. It doesn't recognize voices that simply, actually. And you do have to say navigate to and call. And if you have the same person with several numbers, it also doesn't know whether you want mobile or local number. So there is a bit of science to use in the phone. It took me a while.
Fantastic segue, Harold, and totally not set up.
I'd love to hear your
unplanned.
I'd love. It's getting a bit late now, but I'd love to hear your tips on how to make that work a little bit better, because it doesn't understand me most of the time, and it can't even pronounce the name of the road that I live on. So, but then most people can't. So that's okay.
Well, I can't even pronounce Sarah properly at the start of the show. So what have I got?
It's all good. Most people say Sarah, so don't let it worry me.
Oh, actually, one thing, speaking of languages, well, that's really dialects. Does the Model 3 have multilingual support, Pete? Can you change the language?
You can.
Yes, you definitely can.
And there's
you got English, but not Australian.
And there's Mandarin, Cantonese, I think both, Chinese languages, and Polish, and yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah, I think there's German, I presume French.
German, of course, French, yeah. Italian.
Oh,
So if you're learning a language, it's certainly good fun to have your navigation commands and all that stuff read to you
yeah.
in language that you're learning.
Yeah, cool.
I find it's quite dangerous because I ask it to call my wife and it keeps calling my girlfriend instead.
Boom, boom. Oh dear. There was something else I was going to mention about the phone. Oh yes. So a great pro tip that not many people are aware of is if you have appointments in your calendar on your phone.
Really good.
And and if you even go further to actually have the address of the appointment in your calendar, then when you get into your car, you can set the calendar setting. You've got to set it in your app to synchronize with the calendar and synchronize contacts. What it can do is, if you bring up your calendar, well, actually, most of the time it will infer if your next appointment is, say, in half an hour. When you hop in the car, it will just navigate you to that location of that appointment automatically. Or if there's a list of appointments, you can just press in the calendar. Now the calendar is in a little up arrow on the bottom of your screen. There'll be a calendar which actually has today's date as the icon. You can then press on the calendar entry and just navigate to that appointment.
Yeah. That works really well for me. I put the address in all the appointments and the list comes up and then I just press on it.
Sarah, these cars are a hell of a lot smarter than your Renault, let me tell you.
Oh, I'm sure they are. My Renault is very old. So there's a lot of new stuff.
And they keep getting smarter every few weeks. It's unbelievable.
Well, fun times. I'll have to keep coming to the meeting so I can learn more and more. I'm sure it'll take a while.
Another good tip that Richard's just reminded me of. So when you get a new update, it will come up on your app or on the screen. Just remember, it will tell you anyway, but before you activate, just make sure you've got nowhere that you need to go, because it will take, if you work on half an hour, but usually 20, 25 minutes for the car to upload the new software and reboot itself. And you'll hear all sorts of clunking noises and everything else while it does its thing. So that's fairly normal. So nothing to get panicked about. But and then the screen, will go black and it will tell you what it's doing, and then it will reset back, and then you can drive. But
mine asks when you want to update, and it tells you you can't drive for a certain time.
Yes, about 50 minutes it normally says, but I think it's usually a bit
25.
What it estimates.
Mine's always said 25 minutes or thereabouts.
Yeah, that's what mine is.
Yeah.
Mine.
Go on.
I think mine wants to do an update, but it only wants the little yellow arrow thing, downloady looking image is showing up, and it only wants to do it over Wi-Fi, which is
Cheers. Take care. Go, Shane.
Yeah, so I think it wants to do an update. It only wants to do it over Wi-Fi, or so it seems.
Yes.
Which sort of makes sense. But the Wi-Fi doesn't reach to the garage. It reaches to my daughter's bedroom right next to the garage, but not quite to the garage, and I can't actually pick it up in there. Suggestions?
Okay. You can hotspot it. Two things: drive your car across your grass and next to your modem, whatever, through the roses, or you can tether Wi-Fi from your phone if you get a software update there and then. So as you described, the yellow icon, which is a down arrow with a horizontal line at the bottom, that's the download symbol. If it's yellow, it means that there's one that it wants, but it's not going to do it until it's connected to Wi-Fi. And in fact, when it is connected to Wi-Fi, that'll change to a green symbol. Now, so you could tether off your mobile phone, or
I'm thinking I'm going to make a trip to JB Hi-Fi and like
get an
buy some sort of
extender.
antenna.
Just get an
Yeah.
extender to your garage.
Yeah, mesh network.
I've got a 50-meter long house and I have an extender.
50 meters, truth. Okay. The weird thing is I can go from my place to my neighbour's place, which is 200 meters away, but that's through the window. The catch to get to the garage has got to go through a bunch of brick walls to get there, and it doesn't like that.
No,
Got a sledgehammer?
The bricks.
You got a sledgehammer? We can fix that.
The brick's fine, Shane. It's if it's got reinforcing bar, like if it's poured concrete or anything like that, or if you've got that sisolation, the aluminium foil as insulation.
Oh yeah, there'll be that in there. Yeah.
That'll kill your Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is only 2.4 gig or 5. Gig.
Yeah, it can't pick up either. It can't pick up the 2.4 or the 5. It can't pick up either of them.
So you could,
mind you, neither can my phone. So you know.
Well, as Carmen said, just get yourself a Wi-Fi extender.
And yeah, Telstra have them. They're not very expensive, depending who you're with. But I've got an Apple as well.
Yeah, and you can
get what? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that you had?
It's an Apple Mac.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right, cool. I think I'm just going to go and drive my car out in the front lawn.
I was just going to say, just run over the roses and whatever, and it'll be right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just about to do that right now. I'll be back.
I got a mesh Wi-Fi from JB Hi-Fi and installed that. So because I was having some difficulties at the end of my house, so mesh Wi-Fi, I've got Wi-Fi 6 throughout the house and around the neighbours now.
Very generous.
Actually, one little pro tip too is most modems are set to automatic channel selection depending on local interference. One thing that the Tesla will not do is pick up channel 13. Because in the US, that's used for high density, very short range applications, which it's not used for in Australia. So in the Tesla, it's a reserved thing. It won't pick it up. So I learned that the hard way once when I manually selected 13 because it was one of the quietest channels, and my car went dead. It would not pick up Wi-Fi. So just do a check just in case that your modem has selected channel 13, and then maybe just manually select something else, or just reset it, and there's a chance it might pick up another channel. But 13 does not work on the Tesla because it's effectively
because it's an unlucky number. That's why, Harold.
Well, that's exactly right. Too right.
And then in Chinese, if you
I'll
add
try
the
that
3
first.
and the 1, you get 4, and that's death. So it won't work either.
Right, but if you pick channel 8, being a Shanghai car, it'll be very auspicious. And it'll
Oh yes,
really well.
or 7. 7 is okay too.
That's it. So, so Shane, you must have gone. No, you're muted. And
it's gone to the car.
He's gone to prune.
No, I'm still here. I am actually still here.
Oh no, cool. Okay, so what I was going to say is, you obviously don't need Wi-Fi all the time, but you do need it for software updates. And every year at about the middle of the year, so we should be getting one soon, will be a map update. And the map updates, again, it will only be done on, actually map updates are only done on Wi-Fi. Software updates are mostly done on Wi-Fi, but if there's a safety issue or security issue, Tesla will actually push that update to cars on the mobile network. It's just that they don't do it very often, but they can do it if they need to.
Right, okay.
And if you've got plenty of phone data, you could just temporarily tether your car to the phone, and you can even do that while you're driving. So
I think I'd rather just.
Yeah,
do the
I've
mesh thing.
actually downloaded an update when I was traveling by tethering my phone to the car, and it downloaded, and then I installed it.
Yeah. So if you've got plenty of, see you, Angela.
Well, if your phone is on Wi-Fi, then you shouldn't have to pay for it.
No, but it's not. His
can't
Wi-Fi
get-
doesn't reach his phone.
Yes.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
The Wi-Fi basically doesn't reach the garage. But the
Okay.
channel 13 thing might be a trick. This is just, I don't know, when they did the NBN upgrade. I finally got NBN like this year. When they did that, they messed up my phone, but like my landline, but they also sent me a new modem, and the modem doesn't reach as far as the old one. So,
it might be because it's 5.8 gig, perhaps. Or has it got external antennas?
No, it hasn't, and it hasn't even got a plug to plug one in either. So
okay, so look, there's a lot of things you can do. You could just go and buy yourself a router, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, that was what I figured the guy at JB Hi-Fi would sell me, and I'll just stick that in the roof space, and then it'll go for miles.
Yeah, well, what you could do is you could sort of have two networks. It gets a bit complicated, but you've got lots of different options that you can sort of do. Some of the provided the telco provided modems, which have built-in Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi is not particularly great. So sometimes it's more effective just to go and buy a purpose-built router or modem hotspot. Not modem, sorry, router. So then you just turn off the Wi-Fi on your Telstra box and rely on a Netgear or whatever it is, D-Link.
Right.
And then some of those have options. I think Netgear.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense.
Basis.
I don't end up with 3 networks. I just get one network that just works.
Yeah.
I don't have, because at the moment I've got 2. I've got a 2.4 and a 5 or something.
Oh no, that's okay. That's quite common to have a split that they have 2 frequencies. That's okay. But sometimes if you just get, like for instance, I know Asus, they have routers now that act like a mesh network. So if you had 2 of them, they can work together. And if they're sufficiently far apart from each other, but they can still talk, then you can get a much broader sort of scope. It just sort of depends.
That sounds like a good plan. I can get Wi-Fi into my shed if I do that.
Well, you possibly could. You could. Or you could have a couple of different networks. It doesn't matter. You could keep your Telstra modem running as a Wi-Fi because it's okay in the house. Get some Cat5 cable, network cable.
Yeah, the blue stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the blue stuff. Link it from one end of the house to the other. Put a router at the other end of the house closer to the car, and it can be its own separate network. It doesn't actually matter what its hotspot thing's called, what its name is. You can just call it house 2 or something, and then get your car to latch onto that. It doesn't all have to be one unified network. It can be 2 separate networks all connected to the internet. It doesn't matter really.
But it's better if it is one, because then you can walk around your house into your garage with your phone, and it will remain connected to the one Wi-Fi. So I've installed a mesh network. I got Orbi, my old modem router Wi-Fi unit. The Wi-Fi was failing, so I turned off the Wi-Fi on that, stuck in some mesh routers, named it exactly the same as it was before, and everything just automatically connected. Same name, same password, didn't have to change anything in all the systems. And it works brilliantly throughout the house.
The Orbi's not cheap, but it's it's very high speed, because the Orbi, and I've actually got an Orbi in, and the beauty of it is that it has several modems built inside, or several Wi-Fi devices built inside, and the link between two Orbis is dedicated, and it doesn't basically slow down the traffic. Some mesh networks, if you're at the end of it, you've got a certain amount of traffic you want to get through, but the modem, the two mesh items actually gobble up some of that, because they got to talk to each other to do the routing between each other on the same channel. So what Orbi does is they have two separate setups. So the actual backhaul, where they talk to each other and transfer all the data, that's independent of the network that they're showing your mobile devices and cars and whatever. But you do pay for it. It's not cheap. And an alternative is just to get, these days, a lot of these version 6 modems, they do mesh networks really well and quite simply, and you can just do that. Or just put up with crappy internet at your car, and just every now and then, when you see that symbol like you have now, just tether off your phone, or I haven't tried, I don't know if it would work at like shopping centers where they got free Wi-Fi, but you know.
The free Wi-Fi down in the Midlands is rubbish at the best of times. I think what I'm about to do is just drive around the front and park it out in front of the office where the Wi-Fi modem is, and go from there.
Harold, you could always
yes, Jared,
little ubiquity from Access Antennas, which is better than the rubbish that you buy from JB Hi-Fi. It's a bit more commercial grade, but it's actually a lot better product, especially for Wi-Fi units. And the Wi-Fi 6 long range it goes for miles.
Yeah. It's one thing I learned the hard way is I had a not very old laptop. It was a HP, really cheapest chips laptop, and the chipset, the Wi-Fi chipset, needed a driver upgrade to actually even talk to version 6, and it just wouldn't do it. I couldn't install it, I couldn't download it, so I ended up just buying another laptop. Obviously your phones are okay because they've got the latest greatest, but the version 6 is the equivalent of 5G. That's the same sort of technology that 5G uses to get really fast internet, and it is blisteringly fast.
Yeah,
absolutely blisteringly. I
think
think
that's $200 for a
yes,
standard ubiquity. Actually, I've got one here. I'll pull it out and I'll show you.
But yeah, you definitely do. Like I said, you do need Wi-Fi for the maps and for most of the software updates. Oh, and when you do a software update and it's downloaded and it's ready to install, you'll see like an orangey, yellowy alarm clock, old-fashioned, oldie-weldy analog alarm clock with 2 bells on top. When you press that, it'll say you can schedule software installation, later tonight. I think it defaults at like 10 o'clock at night.
2 a.m. on mine.
Sorry, say again, Carmen.
2 a.m.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool, yep. Or you can install it sort of now. So when you say now, it actually has a 2-minute countdown timer. Now, if you don't want to wait, and you can cancel that at any time until it goes down to 0. And if you don't want to wait for the whole 2 minutes, you just tap your finger incessantly on the 2 minutes for the countdown timer. And after you tap it about 3 or 4 times, it then goes down to 2 seconds, and then it will go 1 and 0 and then start installing.
Oh, wow.
So that's like if you just can't wait and you're a little bit tetchy, just keep hammering the time until it goes down to 0. So they've kind of thought of everything, really. So Jared, did you get the modem for me?
Yeah, so that's the unit. That's the box.
That's the box, mate.
You probably can't see it, but that's what it says.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi 6 light, and
Yes.
it looks pretty like that. It's like a UFO.
Oh, that's very
device.
commercial. Yeah, that's like the commercial ones in hospitals and stuff. Yeah,
Correct. You'll find them in shopping centres, concert venues, and they're about anywhere from $150 to $300 to $1,000, depending on the model and what it does. And the new Wi-Fi 6, which is this one, which is the light, and then there's the long range version. You can control your Wi-Fi from something like 800 meters, probably even more further down the road, depending on how you point it. What might be a problem fix for you, Shane, that you're with your Wi-Fi issue. So you just run some Cat 6 cable, basically from your router, which has a port saying external out, and then you plug it into the underneath at the bottom of this, plug it in, and then it basically just aligns itself and turns itself on, and away you go. You have a blue light on the front, and that's it. You're done. And up you go.
And where do I find one of those?
You'll find them you won't find them in JB Hi-Fi or Harvey Norman, because these are professional units. You'll find these at a company called Access Antennas, which are located in Osborne Park, and they do sell to the public. And there's two other companies I think they sell them. They're a brand called Ubiquity. I found them about 5 years ago, and probably the best Wi-Fi brand around, I reckon. I don't think there's any better. Cisco, probably the next best thing, but it's about 15 times the price, and I think these guys are actually doing better things than Cisco is at the moment. I think they've got some better engineers working for them. So if you want high-speed internet that works well, one of these will certainly fix your problems. I've got 3 of them in my house, and I've got a mesh system outside my house, all Ubiquity, and it works perfectly. I can open my roller door from at least 800 meters away using the Wi-Fi before it even goes to 5G. So
is that it there, Ubiquity, Jared?
Yeah, that's it there. But that's the that's the one there. That's a nano beam. But if you go to Access Antenna, these guys might have it as well. You're looking for the Wi-Fi 6, which is the new version. Everything's going Wi-Fi 6 now, and it looks like that UFO. I guess if you type in Wi-Fi 6 under Ubiquity, and
I'll just go price. I'll just go sort by price.
Yeah. And all you need is that, sticking that, and then a bit of cable running across, and they'll fix your problem, Shane.
Sounds good. Thanks for the tips, guys. That's appreciated.
Yeah.
In the short term, I think in the short term, I think I'll just drive my car around the front and yeah. But yeah, that sounds like Saturday's mission. Go and find a UFO.
Yeah, you just put it in the ceiling. It can go in the ceiling. It can go inside the roof cavity, and it'll bounce through. The particle boards, no problems. No issues with it at all. But Access Antennas and Osborne Park, they're good guys there. They'll look after you. And they just sell them straight off the shelf. And I think they're not that expensive, like $100 and something for the base model. That's all you need. Unless you want it. But these are commercial grade. Like I said, you'll find them in shopping centres, and they're replacing that thing that you see in people's houses with 10 antennas pointing off it. Well, that replaces it.
Yeah. So, no, that sounds like a good plan. I'm not entirely sure why it doesn't reach the garage. I assumed it was the brick walls, but like Harold says, there's no steel in the wall. It's brick.
That's it.
But the alternative, if I go, that's the garage is that way. If I go that way, which is out the window, it'll be 200 meters, and I can get it no worries. So I don't understand why it doesn't work, but I figure if I'll stick a UFO up there, and it should be good wherever I go.
Stick one of these units up there, and I'll guarantee it'll work. Otherwise, I'll pay for it.
You're on. No problems at all. Quite happy with that. You'll come back and say it's fine.
No. So, Jared, that's very interesting. I think, Shane, what we need to do is if we wrap the Ubiquity in for aluminium foil, it won't work properly, and then you'll get it for nothing.
That sounds like an excellent plan.
Yeah, I want to see photos.
I'll just put my
we'll set it to channel 13, and then it won't
Channel
work.
13.
We'll prove it. We'll go, it works on the iPhone. It doesn't work on the car.
Doesn't work on the car. Well, mine works beautifully on the car, so it hooks straight into the car. So no problem at all.
Dear.
All right. No, I was hoping that I might be able to get the download through the premium connectivity thing, because that would cause any problems. But if that's not the case, I will just go and drive the car around to the front of the house. And
yeah, Tesla, they generally don't do routine software updates, and some of them can be quite minor, or they're doing various tweaks for shadow mode and other stuff. Obviously, data is money. Network data is
something
money.
definitely came through though, because the kids were mucking around with the games that are in there, and there's now more games on there than when I picked the car up.
Well, games are a high priority, Shane. You forget about.
Yeah, I know.
And
not quite 2 weeks ago, and there's more games in the car now than there were then. But there's still a yellow download thing, so there must be something. Yeah.
Yes. So that's for a software update. I don't think the games necessarily have that same symbol. I don't think Tesla treats it as like an important thing. So
new games will come down with the update. If there's any new games to be installed, they come with the software update.
It seemed to have installed some new games without me even knowing.
Yeah, but what's to say that your kids haven't tethered their phones or your phone already just to get the games, because they tried to play the new game. It's like, sorry, got to download.
That's quite possible. I did leave the nephews in the car with the key for 2 hours the other night. So yeah, quite possible.
Well, what you got to be careful of is when you play that buggy game, that car racing game, that you don't.
That messes with your head. That messes with your head.
Yeah, but it also messes if you have your car parked on grass, which
you dig a little hole.
Well, Pete and I discovered at a certain school that we visited, and the kids were playing that buggy game, and it just fully sunk itself into the grass and just took 2 pivots out of the oval, which was sort of suboptimal, but these things happen.
And if you play it parked on concrete, you'll get flattened areas on your tires.
Yeah,
it's not very good for the steering either. Good idea is to put cardboard underneath the wheels if the kids want to play the game.
Yeah, I found it way easier to use the little buttons rather than drive with the steering anyway. So,
or you can put the Xbox controllers. You can connect them up through the USB stick, or you can put a little wireless dongle in the USB port as well, and you can use the Xbox controller.
Okay, let's come back to that another night. That sounds like fun. Let's do that another night. I'm going to go and park my car at the front, gentlemen. Thank you very much for all your tips.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, on that note, it's probably a good time to have a shout out to all our YouTube viewers. Remember to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Shout out to Damon, who watches us in half-hour slots. Ashley, all the best to you. I hope you're enjoying and not falling asleep too often. Joe, thanks for letting us lull your kids off to sleep every Wednesday evening. And everyone else watching, including Hosni Mubarak. Still don't know who you are. Please do send an email to secretary@tokwa.org.au so we can give you a proper shout out. Yeah, everyone here, thanks for being here. in lieu of any final comments or questions, might be a good time to wrap it up, but we're going to get Nigel to ask something very important.
No, I've got a couple of things that I've been wanting to ask all bloody night.
Go on.
But no, everybody else was chatting away, so that's fine. So first thing,
Good night, Nigel.
Yeah, good night, Pete. No, I want to ask you a question, you bastard. Come back. So first thing, while I was down in Margaret River, there's a new accommodation place that's got 2 Tesla destination chargers installed in Margaret River. It's called Vintage's Accommodation, and
they on plug share?
I was about to do that. Yes. So go down. Yeah, the one on the right. No, right. No, right.
Right.
No, that one. Vintage's Accommodation. And of course, I completely forgot to take a picture of it.
Oh, Nigel. Really?
Yeah.
Taking a photo.
I forgot.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, they've only had it installed for a very short while. And I was looking for somewhere to stay in Margaret River in a few months. So I went in there and booked. I went in, parked my Tesla, and there's a couple that own it. He's in England, but she was managing the place. And she nearly wet herself with excitement. I was the first electric vehicle that had driven in there. Yeah. Unfortunately, they got 2 and they're on a post, which is fine. But they got 3-meter cables, and they put the post behind one car parking space. The only other car parking space is to the right, and the cables won't reach. You might, if you're lucky, with a Kona or something driving in, because they're in the front, so it might reach that, but it would never reach another Tesla there. So I did point that out to her, and she was going to look into it. Yes, Andrew, I'm always on holiday. I try to be. But we went down for my wife's birthday, which was on Monday. So that, I thought that was quite interesting. And I had a long chat with her about, they've got 1 cable coming into it and 2 chargers hooked up to it. So I'm not too sure if it would trip a switch. It charged at 11 kilowatts on mine, so it's obviously a 32 amp one, but I'm just thinking if you actually ended up getting 2 Teslas hooked up to it, whether it would trip something. I don't know what their electricians installed.
Well, no, actually, you're 11 kilowatts, so you're 16 amps 3-phase. So if they've got a 32 amp breaker, you could have 2 Model 3s charging at the same time, there'll be no problem. Or depending on how good the electrician was, he might have actually set it up as a daisy chained setup, whereby the 2 HPWCs talk to each other and share the power.
Yeah, she didn't know. She was going to ask her husband to look into that, and then also look at moving. It needs moving about 3 feet. Then you can park 2 Teslas there. So she was going to look into that.
Out of interest, how much is the accommodation?
I've booked a couple of nights and it was 362.
Total or each?
Total. So 180, 181 a night. If you get the spa suite, it's about 195 a night. And the rooms are very nice.
And how do you book?
You can book it on the internet.
Yeah, I know that.
Or drive all the way down there and go in there and
knock on the door. Hello, are you available?
Then the pigeon.
We booked it for my birthday in October. I booked in a couple of nights.
Yeah. On what? On is it Airbnb or is it Booking.com?
No, they've got their own website. They've got their own website.
Rightio. So did you put the PlugShare post on? Did you put it on PlugShare?
No, it was already on PlugShare.
Oh, okay, so we need
I
to
just heard about it.
What we should do is edit this to actually, in the information, say how you book there, because that could be useful too. Like, you can put website and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I'll look into that.
So see, there's a little button called edit, so you can edit it. and then you can actually edit the location, which I presume actually, since we're here.
That is actually quite accurate.
Right. So
actually, you see where that hashed line is? With
yes.
it's okay. If you move it, okay, just above, yeah, and on closer to the wall, yeah, that's it. That's pretty damned accurate now. But they need to move it up to the line between those two parking bays, otherwise it won't reach.
Right. So for instance, this is actually, I mean, it's very late, so only the hardcore like Damon, Ash, Elon, and others would be watching this now, this late in the video. But this is a really important thing you should do when you find a pin that's not right, because most people are lazy and they just drop it wherever. Do put it exactly where it is. So don't go on map, because map isn't, you can't really see much. Go into satellite and go exactly where it is. And then you can also edit all the other information, like the description. So for instance, if we had, you know, www.nigel. Okay,
Yeah,
no, it doesn't matter. We'll do that next time. We'll do that later.
Yeah, I'll look it up and I'll change it.
Yeah, cool. And then you just go update.
Yeah.
So that means then the pin, because when you're driving, there's nothing more stressful than not knowing exactly where a charger is. So now when you look on satellite, it's accurate, which can be really useful, because sometimes the pin might be over here and it's not exactly where it is. So that's another little pro tip.
Yeah.
Please watch your pins and make them accurate.
Yes, Andy, my door is soundproof.
Yeah. It looked a bit
nice,
thick.
Jared. It's pretty thick.
Yeah, it's
impressive.
a
I could
it's
do
got
with
a
some of those for
two-ton
my
lock
kids.
on it as well. So it's actually, if you look at the other side of it, it's a bookcase, so it's a hidden door. It's hard to describe, but my wife likes Harry Potter, and she wanted a hidden doorway into the office, so we built the hidden doorway.
Sounds very Cluedo.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. It's like a dungeon thing going on.
So I've got a question as well for the Brains Trust here.
Oh, God, Nigel.
Well, that's Richard Cooper. That's a segue to Richard Cooper's.
No, it's actually more in Pete's realm. It's about
that's
PV
application.
panels, batteries, and so on. I've got solar panels and battery for the house, but I'm just been thinking about putting some solar panels up and a battery that I can charge the car off, say at night when I come back. I don't want to charge off even though I've got the Synergy EV tariff, I actually haven't paid for any power into my car now for 13 weeks. I'm going to see how long I can go before I actually end up having to pay for it, because I charge off the sun here during the day, but I'm out a bit more now. Probably too much holiday, Andy, I'm sorry. If I stuck on a few solar panels, how do you connect them up to charge a battery that will then you can drain the battery to charge the car? I know John had his little portable battery and his 50 kilowatt inverter on a trailer, but if I want to set that up here, what am I looking at?
A lot of money.
Off grid.
Yeah, a lot of money, and I mean, it just wouldn't be economic, is the short answer. But if you wanted to do it for shits and giggles, you definitely can.
Yeah, I was looking at more shits and giggles. I'm not too worried about the.
What battery do you have now, Nigel?
I've got, it's a Grow Watt cheap shit. I got 6.6 kilowatt solar panels, 5 kV inverter, and 2 6.5 kilowatt batteries. It's Grow Watt.
Can you just add more batteries?
Well, I've got the guys just to give me a quote last week, and to stick another 13 kilowatt battery on, and take the solar panels up to 7.9 kilowatts, and so on. They were going to charge me another 12 grand. It only cost me 12 grand to put in the system originally. They wanted
Maybe
to
get a
charge me.
second quote.
And you'll lose. Okay, so is the inverter still 5 kilowatts or?
No, they want to add in another inverter.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you lose your feed-in tariff, your buyback rate from Synergy.
No, because they're going to push it that it only goes to the battery, not out to the grid. Although you can have up to 8 kilowatts of solar panels, and I think you can add in. You can have up to 7 kilowatts inverter going out to the grid.
No, only 5 kilowatts.
That's the maximum that you can
That's
have.
the maximum, 5 kilowatts out to the grid. Any over that,
If you're single phase. If you're
I'm single, yeah, I'm single phase.
No, I thought
if you have a battery, yeah, go on, Hal.
I was going to say, I thought you could get up to 8.2
on a single phase.
Yes, or 3 phase doesn't matter, but you can go 8 point. I think. Look, a 5 kilowatt inverter and 6.6 peak. That's because of the STCs.
Yeah, that's the 1.3 DC AC ratio. Yeah.
But you can sort of, without, it's almost like a guarantee allocation. You can get 8.2 kilowatt inverter, and Western Power don't actually care how many panels you have. You could have 50 kilowatts of panels per se.
Yeah,
they care about the inverter. But if you're claiming STCs, which you'd be mad if you didn't, well, I'd take that back. But in general, you would always claim STCs. There's a limit on them. So that's why Pete asked the question of you, Nigel, are they adding the panels to your current inverter? Because if they did, what Pete knows is that you could actually get fined or penalised from the STCs that were paid to you for those 6.6 kilowatts of panels. Because if you over panel an inverter, it means that the panels you've already been given those STCs for won't yield the same amount of solar, and they'll basically want their credit back, because the government is basically forward paying you for future collection of renewable energy.
Yeah, they're talking about sticking another inverter in to charge up the extra battery, the extra 13 kilowatts.
Is this battery a Powerwall?
No, it's just El Cheapo piece of shit.
Yeah.
There's
So,
a couple of, Nigel, there's a couple of other options that I've been exploring and have on a ship, I believe, or very nearly on a ship. Maybe not on a recorded YouTube thing. I'll fill you in on the details.
Yeah. So let's just talk about like the official thing of, well, actually, before I even cut you off, Shane, anything that you do with solar that's off grid, as long as it complies with AS 3000, as in it's electrically safe, then you could have a megawatt on your farm. If you've got 4 million square meters, you could put a megawatt of panels and inverter and make as much aluminium out of that bauxite that's under your feet as you like. It's only when you touch the grid that you then have to get permission from Western Power, who control the grid, and that you're bound to that obligation.
And also that's exactly the conversation I need to have with Nigel. That you're precisely right. If I turn my shed into a power station, my shed is my power station.
Yeah, but what Nigel was saying was what he wants to do is actually get an off-grid system.
Yeah.
So it doesn't interfere with his setup. Nigel, if you do
exactly what I plan to do.
Well, but Nigel, if you do that, and if the purpose of that is to just charge your car, then do your best to not buy a battery, because that's just an intermediate step that wastes money.
No, you see, I want to be able to charge it at night. If I'm out during the day, at the moment, when I'm home during the day, I charge off the spare power.
Yeah.
But if I come home and I need to charge it at night, I would be nice if I had, 20 kilowatt, 25 kilowatt, old Nissan Leaf battery or something bolted onto the wall. But and I wanted it completely off grid, but these people said, no, we can't do that. And I go, oh, stuff you.
Yeah, don't believe them. Don't believe them. I've got 30 kilowatt hours worth of batteries, which is oodles. It's twice what I use every day, more than twice what I use every day. And yeah, it's not out of the ballpark. The payback period was about 6 years.
Yeah, well, the payback period for what I've got there is going to be about the same for what I've installed already. I just wanted to stick up another half dozen panels, connect it to a battery. But in order to do that, you've got to have some sort of inverter. But most inverters need to be grid connected in order to work.
No, your grow watt will do that nicely. It'll suck in 5 kilowatts per day. If you've got a recent one, suck in 5 kilowatts and it'll spit out 5 kilowatts. That'll do a 15 amp power point, no worries. And the grow watts, the clever ones, you can parallel them up and you'll get up to 6 times over 3 phases, and you will you'll be able to charge your car with the full 11 kilowatts off a 3-phase plug.
Does the grow watt inverter not need to be grid connected in order to work?
Confirmed. I asked that exact same question of the grow watt people, and no, it does not.
There are quite a few off-grid ones.
It's only when it's going back out to the network it's going to be connected.
No.
I was talking about specialist off-grid.
As a completely standalone doohickey. If you want 3-phase, you have to buy 3 of them, Nigel. You got to buy 3 different inverters.
I've only got single phase.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. You can if you're going to go off grid to charge your car, you buy three of the 5 kilowatt inverters. You plug them all into the same 48 volt battery pack. You stick your RS232 cable into the battery pack and into your BMS and your battery and into one of the inverters. You got to run a comms cable between each of the inverters, and you'll get 5 kilowatts out of each of them, so up to 15 kilowatts.
I don't have enough roof space for all of that. I might be able to fit 6 to 8.
Hang on. Your roof space is independent of how many roof space is how much panels you got versus how much battery storage you've got.
Yeah.
Like over a day, even on a crap day, I make off of my 6.6 or whatever it is. I think today I made something like, I don't know, 14 or 15 kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
Which is buckets.
You see, on my roof, I
made 26.3 today. 26.3.
Yeah,
so that's oodle.
I made 29.4 off my 330 watt panels. Now those are feeding into my battery for the house and grid.
Yep.
I've only got enough room for another 6 panels, maybe 8. I can't fit any more up there. And that is going
that's plenty
off grid into a.
Yeah, they've got 380 watt panels now, Nigel. So you can.
Yeah, they got 400. Yeah. I mean, I could probably make 2 kilowatts. Run that through some sort of.
That's plenty, because that's doing that 6 hours a day, or 7 or 8 hours a day.
I won't be charging up every night.
And you can also change your meter, as Pete put me onto it. Change your meter over to the smart meter, and then upload power into your batteries at 15 cents per kilowatt at night, and then so put some power in your batteries when there are days when you don't get very little power from the sun, when there's no sun.
Yeah.
And they're the days that you can put in, $4 worth of power into your batteries and last, through those peak periods and the rest of the time. So.
Yeah, I need to probably talk to you a bit more, Shane.
Yeah, I've done a lot of maths on this one, mate. A lot of maths, because I don't part with my money easily. And yeah, I think we need to have a beer.
What I'm going to do, just to confuse those who are watching on YouTube, is pause and then come right back. So you're going to wonder why this video was not quite as long as it should be. So welcome back, all you YouTubers. We're just having a little quiet discussion. So yes, so Shane, yeah, when you're off grid, it doesn't matter. It's literally not touching the grid. Western Power does not care. The Office of Energy does, as far as AS, I think it's Office of Energy, as far as AS 3000. But, you know, it's all good. You can basically knock yourself out and have as many panels and inverters as you like, as long as it doesn't touch the grid.
Yeah.
And I guess you could even, you know, for a shed, you could power the entire shed. You could probably power an entire part of your house or all of your house once you go full commitment. And as you know, what you could do too is, as long as you've got an alternate source of energy, you can go off grid. So as long as you've got a small generator, and one recommendation I heard was you just get a small LPG powered generator, because LPG, the fuel doesn't go off like it does in diesel or petrol. So you don't have to worry about stale fuel and stuff like that for when you have 1 week of, you know, rain, continual rain and crappy solar conditions, or get a wind turbine.
A wind turbine, yeah.
The wind turbine doesn't quite stack up. I did the numbers on that one, but when I tracked back over my historical have production versus usage, there were 2 days where I ran into a problem where I would have gone black. Those 2 particular days, interestingly, were in February. So I seriously doubt it was a solar problem. I haven't looked back through the records, but my guess is that's actually when the grid went down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so because if the grid goes down, like say 9 o'clock on a February morning, and it's a fire ban day, they won't turn the grid on until the fire danger has reduced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I can go easily 12 hours without grid power. If I've gone 12 hours without grid power throughout the whole generating day, then in February, there's a couple of days where I've generated 3 kilowatt hours. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not right. There's something funky going on here.
Oh, no, Shane, is it possibly, has your grid gone over voltage and the inverter must...
Yeah, it must shut down.
It's got to stay within...
Possibly, but unlikely for a whole day.
Well, for instance,
for the whole day.
258.
Where I live, believe it or not, in fact, I can tell you that my voltage, and this is obviously, you know, a part of the day called nighttime, my grid voltage is nearly 250 volts.
Yeah, you can go to 258, Harold.
No, most inverters are... Pete, most inverters 253 or 2?
Yeah, no, we'll run hot to 258.
Just bringing up my voltages.
And then you get a line fault. It's called a grid fault on the actual inverter. I've had that before, and they've had to reset the inverter.
Actually, well, have a look at this. As we speak, L1 250.24, 250.45, and 251.49.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's kind of nighttime. So I figure that my house must be near one of the main feeders, and therefore they've got, and it might be an older network whereby they've got higher voltage near the start of the transformer, because by the time it gets to the end of the line, it's got to be probably...
What area do you live in, Harold?
Salter Point.
Is that near the water?
Yeah, but it's, well, yeah, it's near the water, but it's...
it's a bit of a nicer area, isn't it?
It's okay.
So you'd probably find it they would have, you know, a better power source, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but there's no power sources at night time.
He's got the best meter of all of us. All right. All right. I'm gonna check out. Night, guys.
All right, take care, mate.
Okay, bye.
But anyway, so yeah, it's just one of those weird things. I was wondering whether Shane's issue in February might have been over voltage.
Yeah.
So for instance, and I think Pete knows this, Queensland has taken their official grid voltage down to 230 volts to give more headroom for solar inverters to push power into the grid, so you don't go on over voltage. So Western Australia used to have 250 volts as their official grid voltage because the state of Western Australia, or the colony of Western Australia, whichever way it went, purchased discounted transformers from a German company, and they just happened to be 250 volts. And then I think in the early 90s or late 80s, we officially switched to 250 volts as our voltage. But I think if you Google Australia's official grid voltage, it's actually now 230 volts. So most of the eastern states have gone to a 230 volt grid. And that way your inverters have got more headroom to push energy into the grid before they hit their high voltage limits. But as I just showed, you know, where I am, it's like 251 volts, and it's half past. Oh, sorry, it's 11 o'clock. So it's not like there's solar panels pushing out. It's just one of those idiosyncrasies. So yeah, so maybe Shane, because he was in a rural area with skinny long cables, that might have been the issue in February, where you've got lots of solar, possibly. But anyway, so Nigel, that was a very long answer to a short question.
Well, the question was short. To see you up this late, Nigel, too, by the way. Normally you're out, just after Joe finishes her ironing. You've gone?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I'm getting old. I need to go to bed early.
Well, yeah, Richard Cooper's getting old, but he's up every night late. Yeah.
I think you'll find that Joe's actually a dark horse. She does like a late shift in the job that she does, so she's up probably longer than most of us. Oh, except for Pete, because Pete, you're on the Nasdaq trading, day trading on the Nasdaq until 4 a.m.
Yeah, not every night. Tesla's up a good 4.5% today. So,
what? Sorry, what?
Tesla's up about 4.5% today.
Oh, 3.88. Wow.
Yeah, 3.88 now. Yeah,
$647.89.
Sorry.
What's that about?
$24.60. That's up.
Maybe Elon's doing another Saturday night special.
Totally.
That didn't really.
Harold, I've got a question for you.
Yes, Richard.
Number one, thank you for bailing me out down at the university today. I ended up getting a card and I charged up on yours. I went off for a while, looked at some other stuff, came back and charged again, which brings to the question of, how do you precondition a car if you're not supercharging? Because my charge rate was fairly low, and then it jumped up to almost 49 and just sat there after, all the way to the end. How do you precondition a car?
You turn the
aircon on?
Yeah, the HVAC heater on.
Yeah, well, actually, Richard, so you just drove from home straight to WA?
Yeah.
Because when I saw you, so when I came back to our cars, like your car was charging, mine was parked.
Yeah. I bet you felt better.
I worked out in the 5. I worked out, I tell you, I knew I should have turned left at Hackett Drive, whatever it's called, Thomas Road or whatever, rather than going through the main entrance. 'Cause if I
No,
turn left and turn right,
I did that today, and it was really. I called all the red lights. It was slower going that way than going through the uni. Anyway.
Well, when I came
We
back
went
after 5 minutes, you'd absorbed, I don't know how many, 3 point something kilowatts, and I worked out that basically you were charging at about 42 kilowatts, which is about right because your state of charge was really low, like it was 22% when you first started.
Yeah.
And the rate of charging is proportional, well, obviously to the current going into the car, which is usually pretty well fixed. That's about 120 amps, multiplied by the voltage of your battery pack. And when your battery's almost flat, that's a low voltage. So any car will charge slower when it's at a really low state of charge, all other things being equal.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I looked, I think it was Teslab today, and I was looking at my charge rate.
Yep.
When it was at 88%, it was charging at 49 kilowatts.
Yes. So, and it's doing that because, and then once you go much past 90%, it'll start tapering off. So what the car does initially is go into constant current mode. So it'll decide an optimum current, or it might be a slope, like it might be a changing current, but it'll just decide to get a current. And then the voltage naturally rises until it gets to a threshold, and then it goes to constant voltage mode. So when your battery's getting quite full, it'll get to, each cell will be about when it's full, it's 4.2 volts, but let's call it 4.1. It'll just sit there and the energy will just go less and less and less. It'll just like taper away. But at 88%, it's not surprising that you'll get 49 kilowatts because your battery pack is probably at 400 odd volts, and 120 times 400 is whatever that is.
So what you're saying is, if I was on a 350, 200, so I was if I was on a V3 supercharger, what would you expect me to be getting at 88%?
Oh, you could be getting significant. Well, it depends. It might taper off. It's different because that 50 kilowatt charger at UWA can only put out 120, well, technically 125 amps, absolute maximum. A supercharger regularly puts out a 250 kilowatt, 625 amps. It can peak at.
But my question is, when I plugged in the second time, it ramped up for a few minutes and then it flattened off. So why did it ramp up? Why did it charge slower at 50%?
For how long? For a minute or two?
Oh, probably looking at the graph, probably 5 minutes. Maybe a bit longer. 8 minutes.
Well, it might be. The car might be telling it to ramp up. See, because the car controls the charger. Yeah, maybe the car's policy is to, at a certain state of charge, just to ramp up at a steady rate until it gets its optimum, like it finds where it's happy. I'm not sure.
I went off for an hour and came back. So I went from 22% to 50%.
Yep.
And it was charging well at 50%. And then it's half an hour I'll leave, so I left. And then I buzzed around, looked at some other chargers and just started walking around the river. And I came back, charged up, and again, it took about 8 minutes to ramp up, and then it got to almost 50 kilowatts again.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest.
Okay, all right.
Like such a long ramp, I would have thought maybe a minute or.
No, it wasn't a peak. It was definitely a ramp. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is, if you say I'm going on a trip and I want to go to Eton and you put it in, then the car will precondition, right?
Yes.
Irrelevant to what I do.
But preconditioning only means
it heats the battery.
It will either actively heat, or it will allow your battery, or it can actually also actively cool. By the way, like it goes both ways.
It tries to get it to about 40 degrees, doesn't it?
Yes, I think so. Yes. So in winter, and sometimes preconditioning, when you navigate to a supercharger, it doesn't necessarily actually actively heat your pack. What it might do is suppress cooling.
Yeah.
So
But how do you do that manually?
you have to navigate. You can't. There's no switch.
Okay, that's the question. Right.
No, but you can do tricks. So you can, like, for instance, because like, say if you've run out of supercharger credits for your car, if you haven't got referrals or whatever, and say Tesla is 52 cents a kilowatt hour, and the Treendale ultra fast DC charger is 40 odd cents or even less if you're an RAC member. Could do, and that's another pro tip I forgot to say to everyone earlier, is if you're an RAC member, like your RAC insurance, you can register your membership number with ChargeFox, and you get how much is it, Pete? Do you know?
25%.
25%.
Yeah, you put me on that, Richard.
Yeah, 25%. I did that today.
Cool. I haven't done it yet, but I haven't been to Treendale, or I haven't used the ChargeFox thing for a little while. Well, actually, I did the other day when I was towing some furniture, and I ran out of juice, and I had to charge up at Quellup. But anyway, so you can navigate to the supercharger at Eaton, but just turn off.
It's 20%, not 25.
20, is it? Oh, 20%.
You can navigate to Eaton, but turn off early at Treendale. And the presumption is that your car would already be pretty much preconditioned for optimum fast DC charging by the time you got to Treendale, even though it's, I don't know, is it 5 Ks from Eaton or so, roughly?
Yeah, nothing's good.
So that's something else you can do.
And how many charges are at Treendale?
2.
And they're fast chargers too, are they?
They will charge your car, if it's in the right state, like right state of charge and whatever, a fair bit faster than the supercharger at Eaton.
Oh, wow.
But not as fast as the impending charges at Williams. Because Williams can charge your car at 250 kilowatts, whereas Treendale maxes out at 200 because it hasn't got enough current ability. It can only push 500 amps into your car, whereas the version 3 superchargers can push out at least 625 for a few minutes at least.
Yeah. Cool.
Last question on charging. So my Model 3, can I charge that to 100% now? Did I hear that right?
You always can, but you shouldn't.
Yeah. So which model have you got, Jared?
It's got a performance.
Sorry, you're on mute. You're muted, Jared.
You're muted, Jared. No, you're still muted. No, you still are. Trust me. No, you can shake your head all you like. You're still muted.
You are, Jared, but you've got a performance model, haven't you? Right. So you should just charge it to 90% all the time, unless you're going on a trip, in which case you can take it up to 100%, but only as you're about to leave. So you time from 90 to 100 in the morning, let's say. You start it charging again. To get to 100% might take about an hour, and then you get in the car and drive straight away. Don't leave it parked up all night at 100%.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
The idea is that the battery is at its happiest at around 50%.
Yeah.
And so the longer you spend at either extreme is not that great for the battery.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, 90%'s all right. I frequently take mine up to about 90, and then every now and again 95, and then it bitches at me if I do that a couple of times.
What sort of battery is it, Pete, that's in it?
It's a nickel metal
NCA, nickel, cadmium, and aluminium.
This is the new one. This is the new battery. Is that right?
Nickel cobalt.
You've got the old battery, Jared.
Nickel cobalt, not cadmium.
Yeah, it's the NCA battery.
Nickel cobalt, aluminium.
It's only the LFP batteries in the SR Plus from China.
Oh, okay.
Those are the only ones that got the LFPs. And with the LFP, you can charge that to 100% as often as you like.
So if you look on Tokwa's YouTube channel, there's a video that goes like this.
A great way to navigate to a destination is via the maps app.
Oh, no, sorry, no, not that, sorry. It's not that one, it's this one.
If you go on a long trip, you might want to charge your car.
Okay, here we go. Take two.
If you go on a long trip, you might want to charge your car to nearly 100%. It's not ideal to leave your car fully charged overnight, so here's a great pro tip to overcome this problem. Just leave your car plugged in to charge to 90% overnight, and then change the limit to 100% about an hour before you're ready to leave.
Right. Yeah, that's what I got now.
Using your Tesla app. Over the next hour, the car will progressively charge to 100%, although the majority of charging will be completed in the first half hour. The last 1 or 2% takes the longest and can be skipped if you don't want to wait the extra 30 minutes.
And there you go. So that we've got some pro tip videos that go through navigating how to open your charge port door and all that sort of stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, Jared, charge any time.
It's late.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Richard, and that's probably a good time.
We didn't make midnight this week. Maybe next week.
I can't be doing these late nights. I've got to. I wanted to go an hour ago.
Yes. So, well, we were going to go an hour ago, but then
I
I
know.
have a question and a comment. Oh, and now you're muted. No, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Who's muted?
Good night, all. See ya.
Good night.
All right. Good night, Richard.
Chat, guys.
Thanks everyone for
Catch you later.
coming. We'll catch
Good
you
night.
next week. Take care.
Hey guys.
Cheers. See
See
ya.
ya.